Hi everyone, my name is Levi, and in this video I want to talk about Saturn's upcoming transit through the sign of Capricorn. And Saturn will be transiting Capricorn from December 20th, 2017 onwards. It will leave Capricorn on December 17th, 2020, and between March and July of 2019, it will slip into Aquarius, its Mula Trikona sign. Mula means root. So especially between the first 20 degrees of Aquarius, Saturn becomes extra strong. Now then it will retrograde back into Capricorn, where it will finish its transit by December 17th, 2020. So we're going to have a 2.5-year transit of Saturn through its own sign, Capricorn. Now, applying Gemini's second source of strength, any planet that conjuncts or Rashi aspects its own sign becomes manifesting to that sign. Now, before I go on about this, I would like to give some extra information. See, when we look at the horoscope, right, we're looking at the whole life of the person. Everything is in there. So what the person has on a concrete and a material level, as well as their whole psychology, is reflected in the chart. Right, so what are we looking at? So here you see, this is a wheel, a representation of the zodiac, right? This is the wheel perspective. So we have 12 signs, okay, which are created by the movement of the sun, right? The zodiac is a way of dividing space, we could say. And then we have planets, right? The planets are natural indicators of things, meaning Jupiter rules over children, Mars rules over surgery, Mercury rules over friends, Venus over women, also vehicles, and so on. So as natural indicators, this is going to be for everyone, right? They also rule 2 signs. All personal planets except the sun and the moon, the king and the queen, rule 2 signs. So these signs become houses, all right? If we apply the whole sign system, the first sign is the first house, the second sign is the second house, the third sign is the third house, and so on. So the houses represent the specific areas in our lives, right? The first house deals with the body and our appearance, our ability to cognize, and so on. The second are resources, the third siblings, the fourth the home, and so on. So the houses represent specific areas in a person's life. Then we also see the house cusps in here, which are indicated by these Roman numericals here. They represent the focal point of the house, right? The body of the house, the concrete aspect of the house. So the third cusp, right, relates to third house affairs, but the body of that third house can be the body of the sibling, for example. And the fourth cusp can relate to the actual home, and so on. So knowing that, right, how are we going to differentiate even more, right? So I mean, what are we looking at, right? Are we looking at what the person is going to have, right, as things in their lives? Are we looking at psychology? Because everything is reflected in the chart, so we need to find a way to differentiate. And so to illustrate this, I would like to talk just a little bit about the 2 main systems within Vedic astrology. And this is the Gemini and the Parashara school of astrology. And this is going to be relevant to the forecast because I am using concepts and ideas that are given by these 2 schools, right? So first of all, the Gemini school of astrology lays out the framework of our lives, right? It deals with what we have on a concrete and a material level. So will you get married? Will you have children? How many children? Will you become rich, poor, famous? All these things are addressed by Gemini. It's a quite clean-cut yes or no type of astrology, right? The important planet in the Gemini school is the Atma Karaka. Atma means soul and Karaka means producer. It's the soul producer. So the planet that is most intimately involved with our soul's maturation process is, what we say. So, right? So, and the whole Gemini analysis is based on analyzing the Atma Karaka. Right now, the Atma Karaka is the planet with the highest degree in the horoscope, excluding the nodes and the outer planets, meaning Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? But the natural Atma Karaka is the sun, right? And the sun is the important planet in the Gemini school because the sun creates the signs, and the signs, or the Rashis, we say in Vedic astrology, aspect each other, right? Gemini is a Rashi or a sign-based astrology is what I want to say. So because the sun creates the signs and the signs aspect each other, and this is based on direction, the sun is the important planet there, and the sun represents the natural Atma Karaka. It's a natural indicator of self, right? So now So we use Rashi aspects based on direction. So a movable sign in the east is going to Rashi aspect a fixed sign in the west, for example. See, I will just briefly go over what Rashi aspects are. So a movable signs aspect fixed signs except the fixed sign next to it. Fixed signs aspect movable signs except the movable sign next to it. And dual signs aspect each other, right? So here you see a representation of, this is a South Indian chart style. This is designed to do Rashi aspects. So a movable sign, Aries, right? Rashi aspects all fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, except the fixed sign next to it, which is Taurus, right? And then the fixed signs, Rashi aspect the movable signs, except the movable sign next to it. So Taurus is Rashi aspect Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. It's not going to aspect Aries, right? And the dual signs, the corners here, they aspect each other. So it is the signs that aspect each other. And this is going to be important. Okay, now at the time of the vernal equinox, when the sun rises over the celestial equator, right? This marks 0 degree Aries and 0 degrees Aries, and it marks the beginning of the tropical zodiac. And so it's when the sun, the soul, the sun, right, the self, the light of consciousness anchors to the earth, right? Because the celestial equator represents the center of our earth, right? So this creates the zodiac, right? It's the beginning of the zodiac, and Aries is all about that initial spark of creation, right? Of manifestation. So things manifest, and so in that sense, Gemini deals with what we have on a concrete and a material level. Okay, so that's for Gemini. Then we have also the Parashara school of astrology. Parashara deals with all subjective things. So the important planet in the Parashara system is the moon, right? And the moon represents our subjective nature. In the moon lives the idea of separate existence, which is the ego, and also the individual self, or the conscious entity, which has a life force. And the moon's nakshatra placement, for example, right, will determine the dasha cycle. And so dasha means a planetary period, right, when certain things become center stage in your life. And each dasha is ruled by one of the 9 planets, and so on. This is talking about Vimshatri dasha. So the moon deals with all subjective things, right? Now Parashara deals with all subjective things. So when Gemini lays out the framework of our lives, then Parashara deals with coloring that framework. So if Gemini says you're going to get married, okay, yes, then Parashara is going to say, how is that marriage going to evolve? How will you feel about all that? It deals with our feelings. One of the important avastas, and avasta means condition. The condition the planet is in at a certain point in time, are the Lajitadi avastas, right? This is given in Brihat Parashara Horashastra. This shows how planets can disturb or help other planets to fulfill their tasks, and the planets represent the conscious forces within us. So it's going to play out within us, right? Both on an internal as well as an external level, because the Lajitadi avastas also have a predictive significance. So, but it shows our strategies, the strategies we apply to become fulfilled or unfulfilled human beings. Basically, that's what it is. And if you want to go into it, I highly recommend Ernst Wilhelm's teachings, right? In respect to that. That's where I got all this information from anyway. So the moon deals with our subjective nature. Parashara deals with, compared to qualities like tone, density, velocity, warmth, right? So Gemini is going to give you the beginning and the end, right? What we have on a material level, and then Parashara is going to color that. So how are things evolving in between? So in that sense, Parashara is a much more complex system because it deals with our subjective natures. Okay, so now if we combine these two systems, because they're very complementary, right? The sun and the moon, the king and the queen. When we combine those, we get a pretty good understanding of what is going on in the person's life, both on a material, concrete level, as well as within the psychological sphere. Okay, so Parashara, before I forget, uses. In Gemini, we use Rashi aspects, as I mentioned, right? The signs aspect each other. In Parashara, we use planetary aspects, which are based on degrees. In Parashara, it is the planets that aspect each other. So relevant to the forecast here, because Saturn is moving signs, right? It's going to transit Capricorn. So it's going to influence different places in the horoscope, different points, different signs, and whatever contains that signs. And it's these signs, again, there are houses in the horoscope, right? So Saturn is going to influence different areas in our lives. And this is going to play out both on an internal as well as on an external level. Now, when we talk about Parashara, right, we're talking in terms of psychology more, I would say, because Glagitalia Vastas are part of that. But Saturn has a special set of aspects, right? So it aspects 60 degrees from itself, its full aspect. It gives its full aspect, its full influence, 60 degrees from itself, 180 degrees from itself, and 270 degrees from itself. So 60 degrees is a sextile, 180 is the opposition, and 270 is a square in the opposite direction, right? So these places, these points, and whatever contains these signs and houses will be under the influence of Saturn, right? So I will be going over what this means as well. Okay. Now, look at it from your ascendant sign, right? In Saturn's transit through Capricorn, so I will be going over what it means for all ascendant signs. And importantly, also look at the house cusps that fall in the sign of Capricorn, because again, they represent the body of the house, the concrete aspect. So let's illustrate this again, right? So Sagittarius is the first sign, right? The first sign, when we apply the whole sign system, is the first house. Here you see the Roman numerical 1, right? This is the first house cusp. And this is determined by the intersection, see the moment and the place that you were born, right? If you would look due east, right? This is what we call the east point, where that plane intersects with the ecliptic, right? That determines the first house cusp. And then 180 degrees away from that is the seventh house cusp. This is the west point, right? The point due west on your local horizon, where that plane intersects with the ecliptic, because planes stretch out in infinity, right? So when that plane intersects with the ecliptic, that's going to be the seventh house cusp. And the houses, right, which are created by the rotation of the Earth, right, because the Earth spins around its axis, right? The surface spins around the core, goes in, one direction, right? So the bhavas are created by the rotation of the Earth, and they rise counterclockwise against this horizon here, right? This first seventh axis. The first house represents sunrise, right? Where the body is born. The seventh house represents the death of the body. This is where the sun sets, and so on. So look at the explanation for the house from the ascendant. In this case, it's going to be the second house. Capricorn is the second house. And also look at the house cusps that fall into the sign of Capricorn, and also look for listen to the explanation for these houses as well. For example, let's imagine that the third cusp falls in Capricorn here, right? It's not, but let's imagine it. Then the body of the sibling, right, will be under the influence of Saturn transit through Capricorn, and so on. If the fourth cusp falls in there, then it could have a significance to the home. The fifth could have a significance to the body of the child, and so on. Okay, so having said that, I will be going over the qualities of Saturn, right? This is given in Brihat Parashara Horashastra and also in Ernst Wilhelm's book Graha Sutras, right? Which I highly recommend if you want to get more information about this. Saturn and the qualities of Saturn. I will also touch a little. I will also talk a little bit about Capricorn sign, more specifically in the context of what Gemini has to say about it, right? Which I think is very interesting. And also I will touch on some, more general ideas. Okay, Saturn. What is Saturn all about? Saturn represents our inner lack, right? So how to tackle this, right? Now, I will try to illustrate it like this. So the moon the healthy moon represents a healthy ego, right? So because in the moon lives the idea of separate existence, which is the ego, right? So because we need an ego, we need the idea of separate existence, otherwise we cannot become individuals, right? As we cannot live as human beings. Now, Saturn represents the pains of that separation, the pains of that ego. In fact, Saturn represents our body identification. Okay, so in that sense, it represents our inner lack. So whatever Saturn influences, because Saturn is a neuter planet, it means that it works both on an internal as well as on an external level. So meaning it looks for psychological or internal validation, and it also looks for external security, right? So whatever Saturn influences, whatever it looks at, these will be things in your life, areas in your life you get involved with because of an inner lag, because there's a problem, right? And Saturn is a separating influence. It can separate you from things because it doesn't want to compensate for that inner lag. That's why it's such a painful planet. It can be such a painful planet because it just won't give you what you want, because what you want is based on, or is the object of, compensatory behavior, right? Which is caused by an inner lag. And so Saturn, in that sense, is painful because he won't fulfill it. He won't compensate for it, right? The benefics can compensate you for some inner lag, but Saturn won't. Saturn is, in that sense, the hard, the cold teacher. It's relentless, right? It does not compromising. So it's a neuter planet. In that sense, it's a malefic. It's a krura. It's a cruel planet. It can give things, right? In the context of Gemini, right? As a manifesting influence, it can give you things, but you're going to have to work for it, right? This is what krura means, right? It's a malefic. It's not going to give you the thing in a comfortable, nice, and pleasant way. You're going to have to work for it. He will give, right? But he can also take, and when he takes it. It's always painful because this inner lag, right, comes out of this feeling of separation, right? This is the whole Sun-Saturn complex, which is the human complex. The Sun representing the light of consciousness, our soul, right? Our creative, our intuitive connection to the whole, to our souls. And Saturn represents the body identification, the ego. So we have one foot in the kingdom of the angels, right? And we have one foot in the kingdom of the apes. And if we look at mythology, right, all mythological stories revolve around this, right? It's always a battle between the demons and the angels, the asuras and the devas, right? The titans and the gods in Greek mythology. So it's always a battle between our primal and instinctive natures and our higher self, right, which is represented by the angels. And so Saturn plays a very important role in our liberation, in finding the nectar of immortality. And I'm alluding to the Rahu and Ketu myth here, right? So Saturn played a very important role in the churning of the ocean, which I won't go into here, but he plays a very important role in showing us the way to the nectar of immortality, meaning to find liberation. Because as long as we identify with the body, right? Because the body is the closest object to us, right? We're going to identify, we're going to attach to other objects. And when we attach to other objects, we set ourselves up for suffering because we attach to it. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the things in the world, right? But Saturn in due time will bring us the hard and the cold reality that we're going to have to leave our bodies aside, right? We're going to have to sacrifice our bodies, okay, because we're going to die. And so Saturn is all about that, okay? So because the feeling of separation, we get involved with things, and these things, it's aspects, right? So planetary aspecting, right? It's going to play out more on a psychological level. And then Saturn Rashi aspecting certain signs, right? Because Saturn, from its own sign, Capricorn, can create some separation, right? It's strong there, it's in good dignity there. So that's positive, but nonetheless it is going to separate us from things. The Rashis, it's this, or the signs, it's Rashi aspects. Now, if there's no manifesting influences onto those Rashis, because Saturn from Capricorn is going to Rashi aspect Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus, right? As Capricorn being a movable sign, the Rashi aspects all the fixed signs except Aquarius, the fixed sign next to it, right? So Jupiter is manifesting Scorpio. So in respect to Scorpio, the Saturn is going to create minor separations, right? In respect to Leo and Taurus, when Mercury is not aspecting those signs, there will be separation to it, right? So life evolves, right? Death is a part of life. Things grow, things decay. And Saturn reminds us of that. Saturn is a quadruped, so it means it stands on 4 legs. It's able to carry great burdens. That's what quadrupeds do. It's a tamasic planet, so it gets involved when there's a problem. And the essential problem, the deep problem, which is so deeply ingrained within us, is our feeling of separation. So whenever you feel a lack of something, it's because Saturn wants to show us that we need to find healing and dignity within, right? So now it can be extreme. Let's imagine that they take a child from you or a parent when you're young or something. This is devastating, right? The ego, it's just unbearable for the ego, right? The pain of it's an extreme pain to the ego. So how do you cope with this, right? You just endure it. That's the only thing you can do. If things like this happen, and this is happening all the time, right? Every day these things happen. People get sick, people die, people get murdered, and this is Saturnian dimension, right? So I mean, it's a part of it, and it represents it. This is all coming from a deep inner lack, a deep feeling of separation, feeling separated from the source, right? The sun represents our soul, right? Our, as I mentioned, our intuitive feeling to the whole, to the connection. It is the only thing that will truly fulfill us. This is the sun. Okay, so we need to learn, and this is going to be a long process, to detach from objects, right? We're going to have to learn to detach even from the idea of the body. Okay, so sages throughout the ages have communicated this, right? That there is in fact a state that is beyond the shackles of the ego, right? The shackles of the ego, because we need an ego, otherwise we cannot, live on this planet. But the identification, so when we only look as that to be the only reality, then we are going to suffer. We set ourselves up for suffering, right? And hence the human complex, right? Now, Saturn always looks down, right? It always sees the negative. This is one of the qualities also given. It looks down, it sees the negative. In that sense, it's a very, complex planet. It represents our complexes, okay? So, we need to endure whatever Saturn is hitting, right? So if you're having a Saturn transit on your sun, on your moon, say if your sun or moon, or for that matter, any personal planet falls in Capricorn, then Saturn transit will show you the weaknesses in respect to that planet. The sun represents your identity, okay, your vitality also. So the moon represents your, emotional fulfillment, what you need on an emotional level, on a personal level, your capacity to adapt. So when Saturn transits these points, it will bring out some vulnerabilities, and we have to endure it, and we have to learn to detach from it. And the only way that we can detach from it is by, the help of Saturn. And, human beings seem to evolve only when there's suffering involved, right? So, I mean, it doesn't mean that there's only suffering, right? This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when it comes down to it, because we're all gonna die, this deep feeling of separation is within us. This is going to play out in our lives, right? This is going to play out in how we act, how we feel. We're going to compensate for this inner lack. We're going to compensate for this isolation and feeling of separation. So we need to find the source. We need to find our light. We need to find the sun, right? Because the sun is the thing that is going to fulfill us. That's why it's important to follow our dharma, right? Dharma is following our natural inspirations, opening our heart. And when we find and we open our hearts, right, we can become liberated, right? First, we need to develop in the heart. We need to open up and let go whatever we don't have any control over. And Saturn is teaching that lesson. It's very slow, right? It's the slowest moving planet. It dwells, pretty far out there in our solar system. So it's all about, not showing our weaknesses. It's moving very slowly. So we need to have patience with the process. But one day we will overcome this, right? And we will find the way back to our natural state, which is indicated by the sun, right? And also the Logitaria Vastas, they are all about, natural law, how we act, how are we going to behave, what strategies do we apply to find the way back to that natural state, or to become more attached to the body, and so on. So it's a slow moving process, but in due time it will hit, right? It will come to fruition, and we will all find the nectar of immortality, right? We will find the way to liberation. Now, if you're going through a difficult time, right, these things can sound, harsh, or even not meaning anything, right? But I think we need to focus on, because as I mentioned, Saturn always looks down. We need to look up, right? The sun look always up, right? It always sees the next thing. It always wants to create its kingdom. Right. And now, before I go on, now see, Saturn also represents or rules our resistance to suffering in that sense, right? A healthy Saturn in Shadbala means individual strength. And when Saturn is held by its two friends, Mercury and Venus, and also Jupiter is a friend when it's conjuncting Saturn, right? This is going to strengthen Saturn, right? Because Saturn, again, it represents also our resistance to suffering before we totally collapse, right? Now, there's Saturn, unfortunately, has three enemies. Well, I'm saying unfortunately, but you know, the Sun, the Moon, and Mars are its three enemies. So Sun, Moon, and Mars will starve Saturn, right? Because Saturn just wants to be left alone, right? It represents that inner lack. It will get involved only when there's a problem, when the problem is solved, right? When you find it within, then it moves on. There's no problem with Saturn. So it is, I mean, Saturn represents it within our consciousness, okay? So it's not the bad guy, right? It's just showing us it's not going to let go. It's the aspect within us that we won't let go, right? We just are too attached to. And so when Sun aspects or star of Saturn, we say Sun creates an experience to Saturn, right? So the Sun, our creative nature is creating our vision in the world, is going to create it, and is going to try to do it through Saturn. And Saturn represents our unhappiness, what we don't want, our complexes. So you can see the pathology coming out of that, right? So for example, sexual pathologies, always Sun, Saturn, starving Saturn, serious ego battles, Sun, starving Saturn, and so on. So then the Moon, right, representing our emotional fulfillment, starving Saturn, right? So we're going to look, the person is going to look for emotional fulfillment through things that are just, are not able, things that will never fulfill us, the person, right? So you know, so Moon, starving Saturn, it means Moon looks at Saturn, it creates an experience to Saturn. Moon is trying to fulfill itself through Saturnian things, right? Through what it doesn't want, what doesn't work for its kingdom. And so there's also sorts of problems coming out of that as well. And the same for Mars, right? So now, as I mentioned, Saturn has two friends, Mercury and Venus, right? So two benefics, right? They give Saturn help, right? They're gonna create awareness within our consciousness, not to focus on the things that don't work for us, right? So because we want things to work for us, we need the Sun, we want to create our kingdom, right? So if we look at the world, we see a lot of misery, right? But we cannot focus on that misery. We have to find a way to create our own kingdom, a better place, right? This is not being egocentric, but just find it from within and try to create your own kingdom as much as possible. And from there, things will open up, right? As how, you know, bad the world may seem. So Saturn reminds of all of this, that there's a great feeling of separation from the whole. And if you know, look at the yuga that we're now in, like the time cycle that we're now in, you know, there's a lot of illusion, there's a lot of separation, right? And so now, I think that's enough about that. Saturn is also a starry planet. Starry planets deal with, you know, are all about efficiency through practice. So, in this, you know, respect to Saturn, it's about developing skills and our capabilities to deal with the suffering. It's also a Sudra. It's another quality. So it deals with paying our dues. Sometimes we get involved in situations because we have a debt to pay, right? So sometimes we're drawn to that, right? Again, because there's a problem, because we need to pay our dues, right? And see, if we're talking about Capricorn sign, right? Just talk a little bit about Capricorn sign, that I don't make it too long here. See, Capricorn, so what Gemini has to say about Capricorn sign. Aquatic animals, things moving in the air, planets, birds, demons, villages, kapha, itches, defects, guilt, and tumors, joints in Capricorn, right? So aquatic animals refers to fighting emotional battles, right? And there can be stagnation in Capricorn, in respect to Capricorn. And this can result in escapist behavior and also in addictive tendencies, right? The water needs to flow, right? The opposite of Capricorn is Cancer, and the Capricorn Cancer axis is always balancing out the material, right? What we do in the outer world and our emotional needs, okay? So we need to balance these things out, because see, Capricorn is a movable sign, right? So it's action oriented, and it's also an earth sign, which is all about creating material security. So it's action motivated to create material security, right? And it's pole, it's opposite has Cancer, right? So it's balancing out those two. So aquatic animals refers to this, right? So keep the water flowing. Then things moving in the air, planets, things moving in the air is all about destiny and fate, right? And the planets represent these powerful karmic influences, because Capricorn can be a very decisive and willful sign, and because of that, it can get stuck in things, right? In that sense, it can stagnate, and it can have a hard time grasping concepts like free will and destiny and fate and this kind of thing. Then birds can refer to having too many thoughts, right? Being too mental, and getting frustrated because of that. It can also refer to psychic abilities. Demons can refer to psychic sensitivities, and also psychic disturbances. Then villages can relate to that the person doesn't feel validated, in the place that they were born, right? Or that they feel stuck where they're at. This is what villages refers to. Then kapha can relate to overweight. Itches can deal with mental frustrations, and then defects and guilt. There can be guilt for no reason. And tumors reminds us of the fact that life, right? So much about life is about burning physical karmas, right? And joints in Capricorn. So it seems heavy, right? But the point is, see, when Gemini talks about tumors, so the fact that life is a lot about burning karmas, physical karmas, right? Now, because of that, we become very humble, and from that space of humbleness, we can address the root, or we can go into the root of suffering, right? So Capricorn, it sounds a little dramatic and a little heavy, and Gemini is, he puts a lot of weight on it and emphasis. It can go either way, right? This sign has the greatest capacity to overcome its inner weaknesses, right? See, Capricorn is the original 10th sign of the zodiac. It's the foundation point of the zodiac, right? It's where we perform our great deeds, right? It relates to the 10th house, which is the karma bhava, which is the bhava that relates to performing our great deeds and our obligations. So in Capricorn, we overcome our inner weaknesses, our greatest weaknesses. And we know that Mars is exalted in Capricorn, right? Mars being a tamasic planet, a masculine planet, is exalted in a feminine sign, Capricorn, where we can fight the battle, right? Mars being the soldier who wants to fight the battle. And so in Capricorn, there is great potential to overcome suffering, right? Jesus was a Capricorn, right? And then in Aquarius, we become humanitarians, and then in Pisces, we elevate, okay? So now the more we get into the signs, right, the deeper we get into the signs, starting from Aries, the more these signs, impersonal these signs become. The waters get deeper, we could say. And, Capricorn is definitely a marker point there, okay? So Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn enters its own house there, its own domain. It will perform, it will create, right? It will find the strength, and it will become stronger in tackling those problems, in tackling those weaknesses, right? And to find a way to look up, right? Mercury influencing Saturn is to find a way to make it work, right? To not focus on the things that we should not be focused upon, right? Because Saturn can always look down, okay? So Venus is also a soothing factor, right? Venus is a planet that can appraise a situation very intelligently, right? And it's a very good influence to Saturn as well. So Saturn in Capricorn is going to help us perform or create, our great deeds, we could say. And this will happen on an external level, on an internal level, wherever you're at, right? Wherever you're at on the path is going to play out. Of course, this is a general forecast, right? So it's going to play out for you and relevant to, your horoscope. Right. Okay. So I think I touched on most things here. I will now go over what Saturn's transit through Capricorn means for all ascendant signs. Okay, hope I'm not forgetting. Probably I'm forgetting many things, but you get an idea. Okay, talk soon. All right, what does Saturn's transit through Capricorn hold for Aries Ascendant? Looking at it from the Gemini angle, Capricorn is the 10th house for Aries. So in respect to 10th house affairs, there will be great manifestation. What is the 10th house? The 10th house is the karma bhava, right? The action house, so where we perform our great deeds. Capricorn is a movable sign, right? It's action oriented. It's also an earth sign, which is always looking for material security. So actions that are motivated to create material security. It's also an Artha house, which deals with, creating material security. That's the 10th house. So it's also the most visible house. So it's definitely going to play out there in the world, right? So it can mean that you find a new job, or if you have a corporation, right? Because Parasha, describes it as empires, right? Which relates to corporations. Then there will be expansion to the corporation, okay? So on a concrete level, also the 10th house, represents the actions of the father, and also, extending meaning, or extended meaning is authority figures, right? So maybe a new boss comes in, right? Saturn transits its own sign there, so it becomes powerful and strong there. So Saturn is always about hard work, and in its own sign, it will be able to go beyond the resistance and push through, right? And manifest in respect to all these things. So that's good news, right? So it's always going to see. Now, if we look at it from the Parashara angle, Saturn in its own sign aspects 7th place from itself, right? 180 degrees. And this is, Cancer sign. And Cancer is the 4th house or an Aries ascendant. So Cancer is all about creating emotional balance, right? Becoming emotionally healthy. And, the Capricorn Cancer axis is all about that, right? How do we balance our need for emotional security, and then also our inner needs, what we need on an emotional level. And the 4th house relates to that. So that's like a double signification, right? The 4th house is the house below what is deep within us. And Saturn aspecting, there can be some, first of all, on a material level, there can be some delays in respect to the home, right? Maybe if you buy a new home, there can be some delays, or maybe you have some costs, extra costs, right? Maybe you need to repair something, and this kind of thing. This can play out, right? Saturn aspecting the 7th place from itself. Also, on an internal level, on a more psychological level, maybe you don't find it time because you need to put so much effort into going out there in the world and performing your great deeds, that you don't find enough emotional fulfillment or rest, right? There can be some delays in respect to that, some vulnerabilities that come up, and this kind of thing. Also, the 4th house relates to the mother. So maybe, your mother needs to be taken care of, or something like that. Or maybe the relationship with the mother is just, not always going that smooth, and so on. So it can play out on that level as well. The 4th house also relates to vehicles and all, sorts of luxuries, like, right, like a comfortable couch, or all things that are, luxuries. And so there can be some, delaying influence. You have to put some more work into these things that can play out. Now, it also planetary aspects the 3rd sign from itself, right? So it's 60 degrees from itself. And so that is Pisces sign, and that for Aries Ascendant is the 12th house, okay? So in respect to losses, right? 12th house deals with losses, also represents vacations, like long-term planning, places of research, and so on. So maybe because, again, you have to put so much effort because things in the 10th house are coming to fruition there, that you don't find the time to spend time alone, for example, which is also indicated by the 12th house, right? Or And this can, you know, also bring up some vulnerabilities. Maybe you have some more extra costs, right? Because, you know, if the house is targeted, maybe you can have some extra expenses, more than you like. And, you know, when we have expenses, there can be some worries and, you know, all things that Saturn represents, right, on an, you know, on a psychological level. Okay, and then it also aspects 270 degrees from itself, which is the 10th sign from itself, right? So that is going to be the 7th house for an Aries ascendant. So in respect to 7th house affairs, Saturn will also throw its influence, and that, you know, the 7th house relates to all one-on-one relationships, right? Relationship to the spouse, relates to, the 7th house is the house of sex, the house of long distance travel. You know, there can be some delays, some vulnerabilities coming up in respect to these things as well. Okay. All right. So I think that's enough for Aries ascendant. And now for Taurus ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 9th house. And Saturn will be planetary aspecting Capricorn, right? Because it's conjuncting it. Their 11th house, so that's their ninth. Also their 11th house, their 3rd, and their 6th house. So applying Gemini's second source of strength, Capricorn becomes manifesting for the whole year of 2018, right? We have Saturn as the Lord manifesting Capricorn, then Jupiter from Scorpio, and then whenever Mercury transits Scorpio, Capricorn, Taurus, or Leo, right? Which you can, you know, you can check this out, right? Over the year of 2018. And there will be 3 manifesting influences onto Capricorn. So Capricorn is under great manifesting influence for the whole year of 2018. So in respect what Capricorn represents for Taurus, it's the 9th house and the cusps that fall in there. There will be manifestation. There will be things coming to fruition. Now Saturn will be planetary aspecting Capricorn as well as its Lord, right? Also the 11th house, the 3rd house, and the 6th house for Taurus ascendant. So now looking at it from the Gemini angle, you know, the 9th house, right, coming to fruition. What is the 9th house? See, all things that we believe in that are greater than ourselves are seen from the 9th house. If you believe in God or anything. Also, marriage is seen from the 9th house, right? It's also something that is greater than yourself. It's a union of 2 people, and it's not only about yourself, right? It's about the marriage. The 9th also relates to pilgrimages, right? Travel that inspires you. So going abroad to meet your teacher, guru, or going to a congress or workshop, something like that is definitely, you know, in the cards. Also, you know, the 9th house is the strongest Dharma house, right? The 1st, the 5th, and the 9th are the Dharma houses. And Dharma means nature. So it's all about following our natural inspirations. It's a house of good luck and fortune, because when we follow our inspirations, we open up to what the world has to offer us. And that attracts positive and good things to us, right? Now, Saturn is a malefic. Right, it stays a malefic. Also in Capricorn, it's strong there. It's in its own house, so it's comfortable there, and it's able to perform better. So in respect to 9th house affairs, there could be some vulnerabilities coming up as well. But Saturn being strong indicates that it's resulting in a positive thing, right? It's resulting in, if there would be struggle, overcoming that struggle in respect to 9th house affairs, for example, because it is manifesting. But see, Saturn is a neutral planet, so it works both on an internal and also on an external level. So in Gemini deals with what we have, right, on a concrete level. So these things can come to fruition. But at the same time, Saturn also, you know, works on the psychological level, and Saturn is a malefic, so always involves some hard work, some karma to burn, right? Saturn, the planet of karma, and so on. So just keep that into consideration. But it's strong there, and because it's strong, it's going to planetary aspect the 11th, 6th, and 3rd house quite strongly. Okay, because Saturn is potent in Capricorn, so the things it aspects can be the things that you focus upon because of an inner lack. So some vulnerabilities can come up in respect to these houses, which I will, you know, go over. And maybe you need to put in some more work, right? There can be some resistance, some delays, and so on. See, Saturn is the planet of taking responsibility. So in respect to these houses, it's possible and probable that you will have to pay a little more attention in the coming year, right? And Saturn is transiting Capricorn for 2.5 years. So the manifesting influence will be for 2018, right? Because Jupiter will be transiting Scorpio for the whole year of 18 as one of the important manifestors. Okay, so what is the 3rd, 11th, and the 6th? The 3rd and the 6th are the houses of intelligence. This is given in Gemini. The 3rd relates to our technical intelligence. The 6th is about tackling the problems of the world, the daily problems of the world. The 6th also relates to nature, right? So our bodies in nature. So it relates to enemies, wounds, cuts, accidents. Also, Parashara gives the stepmother and the maternal uncle. So applying our intelligence to tackle the daily struggles, we could say, is the 6th, okay? Because of doing that, we become more intelligent. See, we keep in mind that whatever Saturn transits, we always have to pay a little bit more attention, take responsibility, and work for it. But whenever Saturn moves on, right, whenever the problem is solved, we could say, because Saturn's aspect always indicates there's some kind of a problem. It can play out internally as well as externally. So whenever its transit is over, right, it moves on, and the house becomes stronger, more authentic, and more unrealistic. The Saturn is a planet of the cold hard truth of the matter, right, which is all about bringing out our authentic natures. And sometimes can be very painful processes that can take years or a long time. It's a slow moving planet, but in the end it's always worth it, right? Saturn always gives great rewards. So put in the effort. That's what we're saying. So 3rd house relates to technical intelligence, developing our skills, short distance travel, applying our will, right? The 3rd house is all about self-will and courage. Also ambition, right? In that sense, it's also related to commerce, like businesses, etc. Performing arts, okay, learning new things, upadesha, which means initiatory instructions, like learning the ABC, learning a new language, learning to play a new instrument. Maybe you need to learn some new skills at your job or something like that. The 3rd house is a house of movement. Okay, so in respect to all these things, there will be some Saturnian influence, and it's Cancer, the 3rd for Taurus, is opposing Saturn there, so it's going to be in an opposition. So things need to be balanced out there. Okay, then the 11th is the 3rd and the 11th are Kama houses and also Upachaya houses. Upachaya means growing. The 11th is the strongest Upachaya house, and Kama houses relate to desire. So following one's desire, following one's material desires, we could say, because Parashara for the 11th gives acquisition of various objects. Okay, so it's a house that relates to gains. It's a financial house, and as I mentioned, it's all about following one's desire. Okay, so Saturn aspecting. Be aware of that. Be aware of what you get into, right? And the reason why you get into it. And this can play out on so many levels. So this is a general forecast, right? But it can work. It can work on a psychological level. It can work on you have to put in more effort, take more responsibility in respect to 11th house affairs, which also relates to getting titles, recognition, right, graduation, and this kind of thing. Also, domesticated animals are given in Parashara because it's a gain, right? It's the house of gain. So chickens give eggs, cows give milk, and so on. That's also the 11th. As I mentioned, it's a Kama house. Desire is the strongest of the Upachaya, and it's also a strong desire. So everything that we desire on a material level, so not necessarily coming from our deepest inspiration, right? It's one of the 11th Lord in Parashara is considered a yoga breaker, right? So it can disturb following one's dharma. But the fact that Capricorn is strong, Saturn is always you know, showing that we need to burn some karma there. There's some lessons to learn, but you will become stronger in it. You'll become more authentic and true, right? So that you can evolve and go deeper within yourself, which is always the ninth house. It wants to inspire us, and because of that, we what is it? We create a buffer, right? We fill ourselves with inspiration, and because of that, we are better able to tackle the problems of the world, and so on. So this is what you can expect from Saturn transit. Just be aware, it's not only Saturn in your horoscope. There's also the Jupiter transits, and Venus and Mercury will be aspecting Saturn a lot of, a great part of the year as well. So there will be a lot of support, but just to be aware of this. Okay, that's enough for a Taurus Ascendant. And now for Gemini Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 8th house, and Saturn will be planetary aspecting their 2nd, 10th, and 5th house. So applying Gemini's 2nd source of strength, Capricorn becomes manifesting for the whole year of 2018, right? And that's good news for the 8, right, in respect to 8th house affairs for Gemini Ascendant. So what is the 8 all about? The 8 is a very interesting house. It's one of the Dushtana houses. It's one of the more difficult houses. But Saturn is strong in its own sign. So whatever comes up there, because the 8 is very unpredictable, right? It is the house of sudden ups and downs, sudden upheaval. It can bring things very suddenly and then take things away. Parasha, gives strongholds and fortresses, right? So it can deal with, chronic disease. Also deals with the occult, right? So the 8th house, in fact, is the house of life force. Okay, so it's also a house of intimacy because it's the 2nd from the 7th. Okay, the 7th is sex, the 2nd is the gain from the sex, so it relates to intimacy. Money that comes in from other people, okay, so from institutions or the spouse or family, inheritances, etc. So there's going to be some karma to burn there, right? Saturn is always indicating that, but it's strong in its own sign there. So it's able to overcome any struggle that is involving the 8th house. The 8th is, in that sense, it's very interesting because it's the house where we work our egos, okay? So in that sense, it's deep. The waters are deep in the 8th, and it can go either way. Now, Saturn's transit to Capricorn and applying Gemini's 2nd source of strength becomes manifesting. So money that comes in produced on a concrete level is what I'm saying, is that you can expect finances to come to you, from somewhere, right? From some institution, maybe inheritance, maybe the spouse, gets a raise or something like that, or something like that. It will definitely manifest for a Gemini Ascendant. Also overcoming one's struggles, right? Some inner struggles, right? Working the ego is seen, and Saturn indicating, right? It's an cruel plan, right? It's malefic, so it can bring up some vulnerabilities, but you will overcome. It's a good time to overcome weaknesses because Saturn represents that, right? What we get into because of an inner lack. Now, Saturn will be planetary aspecting the 2nd, the 10th, and the 5th house. Now, the 2nd and the 10th houses are Artha houses. Artha means, they deal with creating material security. Okay, the 10th, of course, relates to our occupation, performing our great deeds. So probably going to have to put in more work, right? Because Saturn's aspect is always creating, or taking more responsibility. Maybe you get more responsibility at work. It can bring up some vulnerabilities, some things that you need to work through, or you're gonna have to work harder. That's for sure. Okay, and because Saturn is strong in Capricorn, so it's throwing its full aspect, right? 3rd, 7th, and 10th place from itself. So because it's strong, it's going to be a strong aspect. So in respect to 10th house affairs, one's occupation, also the actions relating to the father, also authority figures, there could be things coming up there. So be aware of that. And, but the 8th is strong, so you're strong to cope with it and to deal with it and to find out what is authentic, right? So always, as I mentioned, it's Saturn aspecting always indicates where we have a problem, right? Where we create a problem. Sometimes we're attracted to things because we need to grow. We need to, the situation needs to be created sometimes to let things come up, right? For us able to grow, right? And this again can play out externally as well as internally, because it's a neutered planet, right? It works on both levels. And so psychologically working, the shit, we could say. So definitely great time to become stronger, because see, Saturn transit, whenever Saturn transits something in aspects, as I mentioned, is because we have a problem. So Saturn gives great rewards whenever it moves on. Whenever the problem is solved, it moves on, right? And the house becomes cleaner, because Saturn is the cleaner, the cleanser, and we become more authentic and true to ourselves. Okay, so that's for the 10th house. Then it was also the 2nd house, which relates to finances. So it's an opposition, right? Capricorn. It's Cancer opposes Capricorn, and for Gemini, it's their 2nd house, which relates to close family, friends. So everything that you need to support you on your life path. So you're gonna have to put more effort into creating finances, things that you need to support yourself. Also in relationship to close friends. What is it? Also, Prussia gives collections, like which is a source of wealth, and also jewels like gemstones and so on. Also, the name that you get from your family, seen from the 2nd house. So basically, all things that support you on the life path. You're gonna have to put more effort into it. You're gonna have to take responsibility and respect to these things. And then also the 5th house, there will be an aspect, right? Saturn throwing its 270-degree aspect onto Libra, which is the 5th house for Gemini. And so the 5th relates to knowledge, right? Yantra, mantra, all these spiritual practices are seen from the 5th. And also consistency, okay? Continuance and consistency. The 5th house is the house of, it can also indicate breaks, because it's, the 10th from the the 8th from the 10th, which is, the 8th always relates to a break, and the 10th relates to your performing your great deeds. This is what I forgot about Pisces. When Saturn throwing its aspect onto Pisces, which is your 10th house, is performing your great deeds. So Saturn aspecting the 10th, because Saturn is the karaka of the 10th house, okay? So with it, which is all about performing our great deeds, and we need perseverance and to resist whatever is holding us back to actually perform our great deeds. Okay, a great deed can be, for example, if you need to take care of your parents or something, or it can play out that you're the CEO of a company or something like that. It can go either way. So performing our great deeds is, don't look at it as being only successful in the world, right? The 10th house is the most visible, so it's really definitely, going out there, doing something in the world. And Saturn aspecting the 10th it's a malefic, but it's a good aspect, because we need to put in the effort, right? And so Saturn brings the attention to that by throwing its aspect. Now I was talking about the 5th, right? So the 5th is the house of knowledge, okay? So learning, applying your creative intelligence is seen from the 5th house, right? So there could be some struggles, some delays, some vulnerabilities in respect to these things. The 5th is a nice, it's a comfortable, it's a Dharma house, right? It's pleasant. So Saturn's aspect can, bring up some things that are maybe a little frustrating, or it can play out that it's just not working that smoothly or something like that. Okay, so now be aware that Saturn is it's not only Saturn in the horoscope. Okay, Jupiter is also aspecting, and we have this great manifesting influence to Capricorn, which is your 8th house. Okay, so which is also a finance house, but the 8th is especially Saturn being such a such a complex planet in terms of psychology. So it's definitely going to bring up some things. The 8, right, is always about bringing up some maybe the 8 relates to taboo also. Okay, see what Jupiter transit has done since Jupiter has transited Scorpio, right, which is the original 8 sign. How all these traumas have come up, right, in respect to abuse to women and so on. So the 8 is very much about bringing things up for it can be healed, right? And Saturn is going to bring that to the forefront, and also he is strong there in the 8, right? So you can expect positive and good results. And see, if that is the focus, right, of things fructifying, manifesting, then we create a buffer. It becomes like a focal point, and then we're able, if we take care of that, right, if we take care of the main problem, we could say, then we are much more able to tackle other problems, right? Which for Gemini Ascendant relates to Artha, right? Material, finance, houses, and also in respect to their creativity. Okay, that's enough for a Gemini Ascendant. And now for Cancer Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 7th house, and it will planetary aspect their 9th, 1st, and 4th house. So Capricorn is under great manifesting influence, right, for the whole year of 2018. So in respect to 7th house affairs, you can expect things to fructify, to manifest. So what is the 7th house? The 7th relates to all one-on-one relationships. So example is relationship with a spouse. But in fact, the 7th, right, it's across from the ascendant, right, across from the self, from the body. So it represents the things that you project out there, and the things that you project out there, you get back, right? So in that sense, the 7 relates to all one-on-one relationships. It's a karma house, which is desire-driven also, and relates to intercourse. Okay, sex is seen from the 7th, and conception, so conceiving. We also look at the 7th. It's the furthest away from the ascendant, 180 degrees away, so it represents long distance travel. So moving abroad is seen from the 7th, okay, or staying abroad for a longer period of time. So when moving to another country is indicated in a horoscope, right? And the potential is there. And for Cancer Ascendant, within, between now and 2020, there's a lot of potential, a lot of, manifesting influence to create that, okay? So the 7th house is also a Maraka house. The Maraka means it's a death-inflicting house. It's 12 from the 8. The 8 represents the life force, the 12 the loss of the life force. So the 12 from the 8 is the 7th and relates to death. So death processes, right? It can be on a psychological level. It can be on physical level as well. See, Saturn is always, it's in fact a separator, right? It represents or indicates our inner lack, where we need to work hard, right? It was always going to bring some vulnerability. So in respect to the Gemini analysis, it can give you, it can manifest relationships, for example, but it can also, end relationships, because it is Saturn, right? It is a cruel planet. Even though it's strong in Capricorn, right? It will give good results. But it's Saturn, right? So things can end there, but there will be a lot of, opportunity to create new things, meet new people, business deals, right, overseas, and deals that go on with people in other countries, and so on. This is very much in the cards for Cancer Ascendant in the year of 2018. So as I mentioned, Saturn represents our inner lack on a psychological level. So just be aware that you don't, be aware of the reasons why you get into the things that Saturn aspects, okay? Because it's aspect in the 9th, the 1st, and the 4th house as well. So are you compensating there? Okay, so it will all bring all these things up, some vulnerabilities in respect to these houses. And so on a physical level, it can indicate some delays, some resistance, okay, that you need to put in a lot more work, right, in respect to 7th house affairs. It can indicate that, and you will persevere, right? There's good strength being in its own sign there. But the things that it aspects, its planetary aspects, for example, the 1st house, right, which is the body and your health and your appearance, right? Your strengths and your weaknesses, how comfortable you are in your body, right? It also relates to your life path, your swadharma, your natural inclination, and so on. So Saturn will make you aware and will, you know, kind of, I was going to say force. Yeah, it's going to show what needs to be cleansed, what needs to be purified, what is the attitude that you need to adapt a mentality of detachment. That's what I'm saying. That's what I want to say. So, right, Saturn has been transiting Sagittarius, you know, for the last 2.5 years. It's their 6th house, and so the 6th relates to self-improvement, right? Improving your daily circumstance. You know, getting into working a lot, right, and improve yourself. And so, you know, in the last 2.5 years for Cancer Ascendant, there should have been a lot of improvements in terms of, you know, your daily life and also health. And now Saturn moves on to Capricorn, aspecting the 1st house, which also relates to health. So it's going to, Saturn is the cleanser, okay? It wants to purify things, cleanse things out. So when you get into things that are not for the good reasons, that is not for the good reason, right? It's going to show you your inner lack in respect where you compensate, okay? And this can have to do with health. So maybe you go on a regime or a diet or something, or you stand still and you reflect on your path, your natural inclination, right? So what Dharma is, you know, what you're born to do, and so on. So there could be some vulnerabilities, again, you know, coming up in respect to all these things. Then Saturn will also be aspecting the 4th house. The 4th relates to the home, right? The homeland, property, vehicles, all sorts of luxuries, like a comfortable couch or something like that. It relates to the mother, right? So it throwing its aspect can mean that maybe the mother needs a little more care or something like that, or maybe relationship with the mother, some sensitive points come up, and so on. The 4th, you know, is the house below. It's what happens inside, you know, inside of us, deep within us. So it relates to our emotional, you know, comfort and peace of mind. And so all these things will be under review during the transit of Saturn. And Saturn is strong in Capricorn, right? So throwing its full aspect onto these places, okay, will be felt. And then it also aspects the 9th house, which is Pisces, right? The 9th for Cancer is throwing its 3rd aspect there. And there's also, Jupiter is also planetary aspecting its own sign, Pisces. So Jupiter is throwing its 5th aspect to Pisces. So when Saturn and Jupiter both influence the sign, it also gives concrete manifestation. So in respect to 9th house affairs, which relate to everything that you believe in that is greater than yourself, okay, is seen from the 9th house. It has a spiritual connotation. It's a Dharma house. It's the strongest of the Dharma houses, and Dharma means nature. Okay, so following one's natural inspirations. The 9th also relates to pilgrimages, so travel that inspires you. Right, maybe you need to go to a congress or something, or maybe you meet your teacher or guru abroad, right, and so on. It also relates to marriage, right? The 9th house is all about marriage because it's bigger than ourselves, right? It's the union of two people. It's not only about yourself, but about the marriage. So it can give marriage as well, or in this sense, because it's, you know, it can give marriage because there's, you know, Jupiter and Saturn both aspecting, right? But it also can bring up some resistance or some, you know, things that you need to pay attention to. And Saturn influencing always means that we need to be responsible and take responsibility for the things that it influences, okay? So the 9th also relates to fortune and luck, okay? Good luck if you follow your inspirations, which is, you know, Cancer is a sign, which is when we go into Parashara, right? When he talks about the Dharma yogas, so how we see how capable a person is of following one's his or her inspirations. And Cancer is a favorable sign, we could say. There's a lot of yogas that form for the Cancer Ascendant. And so, you know, in terms of 9th house affairs, I think it's going to be positive. Also, Jupiter throws its 9th aspect, right? It also, you know, it has, it throws its ninth aspect onto Cancer, which is the body, right? So even though there can be some things coming up health-wise, Jupiter is, throwing its benefic aspect, its protecting influence onto Cancer as well. So, okay. And, Saturn is also planetary aspecting. So there could be some manifestations in respect to the life path as well, right? As I mentioned, Swadharma, okay, following one's inspiration. So you're going to have to work a lot, okay? That's always Saturn's indication. Be aware of why you get involved with things. Try to be aware of where you compensate too much, maybe, right? Because these things will be refused, okay? Saturn will not give it, because it's the teacher, right? The real teacher that doesn't want to compensate us for our inner lack, and so on. So it can play out on a concrete level, on a psychological level. This is a general forecast, right? So if you we have to see what's going on in your personal horoscope, right, where we use the planetary dashas, okay, and we use the cusps and the divisional charts and so on. So just keep that in consideration. But generally speaking, right, some of these things probably will touch ground. Okay, that's enough for Cancer Ascendant. And now for Leo Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 6th house. And Saturn will be planetary aspecting Pisces, their 8th, Cancer, their 12th, and Libra, their 3rd house. Capricorn becomes manifesting, especially in year 2018. So in respect to 6th house affairs, Leo Ascendant can expect things coming to fruition. Things will manifest. So what is the 6th house? The 6th house is all about self-improvement. Improving our lives. Relates to the original 6th sign of the zodiac, which is Virgo, right? And Virgo is all about discernment and self-improvement. It's happening in Capricorn. Capricorn is an earth sign. It's also a movable sign. So it's action that is inspired to create material security. Okay, so the 6th house is also an Artha house and also relates to that. So to creating material security. So Leo Ascendant will, in the next 2.5 years, right? It's not only going to be for 2018, but the next 2.5 years, they will improve their lives on a material level. So they will create material security. See, the 6th is also a Dushtana house, and we need strong malefics, strong meaning in good dignity, strong malefics in these houses, right? In these Dushtana houses, which are difficult houses. And Saturn is, Saturn's placement in the 6th house in good dignity is a good place, right? Because in there we have the perseverance, the strength to tackle these problems. Okay, so the 6th house and the 3rd house, and this is also relevant because Saturn is aspecting the 3rd as well, and Gemini are both houses of intelligence. Okay, the 6th relates to applying our intelligence to, deal with the struggles of daily life, and the 3rd is our technical intelligence. So we become smarter in the 6th house. Saturn is a cleanser. Whatever it transits, whatever it aspects, it can bring up vulnerabilities in respect to these things. We need to, put in the work there, but it always improves things. As I mentioned in the introduction, Saturn, whatever we get involved with, whatever the things Saturn influences are the things that we get involved with because of an inner lack. So, it doesn't have to be such a dramatic thing, but just be aware of the reasons why you get in the things that Saturn influences. Okay, so this is also aspecting the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of the occult, the money that comes in from other people, right? Like inheritances, money that you should get from institutions and something like that. So there could be delays, some vulnerabilities coming up there. And as I mentioned, the occult, right? So things that are under the surface. Also, it relates to taboo, death processes. It's also, relating to the occult, right? So in the 8th house, we work our egos. 8th house also relates to life force, okay? It also has a sexual connotation because it relates to intimacy, right? it's the second from the seventh. The seventh relates to sex, and the second is always kind of like the gain of something. Is one way to look at it. So the second from the seventh is the eighth. So it's the bond that is created after the act of sex. Okay, so some taboo coming up, right? Or things that have been hidden. So Saturn can, aspecting can, bring up some vulnerabilities in respect to that. Now, Jupiter is also planetary aspecting Pisces, its own sign, and so there's a good protection, and there's a benefic aspect, right? Jupiter being the great benefic, and in good dignity, aspecting its own sign. There's a good aspect to Pisces. So Saturn is also a crystallizer. So when we have these two planets aspecting a sign, you can also expect some things coming to fruition there, right? Even though Saturn's aspect can also indicate some, some difficulties, some resistance, some frustration. Also, Cancer sign will be planetary aspected by Jupiter. So when Saturn is also aspecting that sign. So in respect to Cancer, the losses, there's a good protective influence as well. Okay, so in the sixth there, you improve your life, you become material secure. There can be more losses because the 12th, right, relates to losses and expenses. But Jupiter's aspect to Cancer, it's benefic influence. And so, it's often it's like this, like when we improve, that, the world throws some other challenges and could play out in terms of expenses and losses. And maybe you have less time to take, less time on your own or something. The 12th is also about, it's a moksha house, like getting away from the troubles of the world could be a little more difficult during that period, okay? And then it also aspects the third house, which relates to skills, developing new skills, right? It's also a house of intelligence. In Gemini, it's relating to technical intelligence. Prasha says upadesha, so learning new things like a new instrument, learning a new language, and this kind of thing. Maybe you need to learn new things in respect to the job. This Saturn and the sixth and the third are both houses of intelligence and of improvement. Right? The original third sign is also ruled by Mercury. Right? The Virgo and Mercury, original third and sixth signs of the zodiac, are both ruled by Mercury, which is all about improvement and applying our intellect and skills to become to become better in daily life. Okay, so I think I'm having a little visitor here, but I think that's enough for Leo Ascendant. Right. And now for Virgo Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 5th house, and it will planetary aspect their 7th, 2nd, and 11th house. Also, Jupiter's planetary aspect to Pisces and Cancer, right, will be felt, right? Whenever Saturn and Jupiter planetary aspect a sign, they also give it manifesting potential. Okay, so that's going to be Pisces. So Jupiter's going to planetary aspect its own sign, Pisces, which is the 7th for Virgo Ascendant, right? You can expect some manifestation there as well. And also Cancer, which is the 11th sign for Virgo, which deals with what you desire on a material level, okay? Now, Capricorn is under great manifesting influence for the whole year of 2018, right? Because we have all these, manifesting planets aspecting it. Saturn as its lord, right, makes it manifesting, and so on. So 5th house affairs relate to, creative intelligence, right, expressing your creative nature. It's a Dharma house. Dharma means nature. So it's all about following one's natural inspirations. And the 5th is also the house of knowledge. Also, what is given in Prussia is yantra, mantra, so all sorts of spiritual practices are seen from the 5th house. But the 5th house also has another connotation, and that is a fall from royalty, is what Prussia gives. So, because the 10th house represents our status, right? So it's the most visible house out there, right? And also performing our great deeds is the karma bhava, so action house. And so, see, the 8th represents the break of things, right? So when we say the 8th from the 10th, it's the break from the status, okay? So a fall from royalty. This is what Parashara gives. So the 5th house being a Dharma house and being, supposedly this light-hearted house, and it is, right? It is a Dharma house, also has this connotation. Also in Parashara, in the fifth house, planets can get ashamed. Okay, so there can be shame with these planets. So it has this other meaning as well. So it's interesting to see, especially on a psychological level, how these things play out. And also, if we examine Virgo Ascendant, when we look at the Dharma yogas, which are given in Parashara, which means, evaluating how a person is capable of, or how capable a person is of following their Dharma, right, their inspirations. And Virgo sign is, a lot of its yogas get disturbed, right? Doesn't mean that the person cannot follow their inspirations, but there's a lot of resistance and a lot of sacrifice needed. And we know that Virgo is all associated with that, right? With sacrifice. It's also, Virgo is all about discernment and self-improvement. Right, so it's very interesting, and also in respect to the fifth house, it's ruled by Saturn. Right, the fifth, the Dharma house, light-hearted house. Okay, ruled by Saturn. Right, the planet of the reality, cold reality, hard reality of things. All right, and so the planet of hard work. It just doesn't really flow well with fifth house, ninth house affairs. Now, so there is some complexity to Virgo sign. That's what I'm saying. So it takes we need to look a little closer for what, how things will play out for Virgo, because of all the reasons mentioned. And there's there's some other reasons as well. But the point is, so for, having said that, Capricorn is under great manifesting influence. So there's going to be creative projects coming out in the year of 2018 for sure. Okay, Saturn is the Lord of Capricorn, and Saturn becomes strong there. And so there's going to be put in hard work to accomplish our creative goals in the fifth. And also the fifth house relates to children, right? I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but there will be things coming to fruition. Maybe a child is born, for example. This is a very general indication, but it could play out on that level. We also see that Pluto is there, right? Pluto represents Shiva, right? The ego destroyer. So when we have Saturn and Pluto in one sign, things become intense, right? And then if if we take into consideration that it's a fifth house thing. So, Saturn, so now I will talk later on what, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, as Saturn gets closer to Pluto, which is not going to happen for quite some time. I will be talking a little bit more about that. So, but you can expect manifestation in respect to creative expression and learning new things, right? Knowledge, as I mentioned. So learning a new course or something like that, something that inspires you, is definitely in the cards for you. And maybe, Saturn is the planet of burning our karmas, right? The things that Saturn influences are the things that we feel an inner lack towards. It's so sometimes we get into things that Saturn aspects because of an inner lack, so we want to compensate for that, and so it could bring up some vulnerabilities, especially to the in respect to Libra sign, right, for this forecast, because Jupiter is planetary aspecting Pisces and Cancer as well. So there's going to be a lot of protection and benefic influence to these houses as well, which is the 7th and the 11th for Virgo Ascendant. But Libra is, excuse me, Libra, the 10th, well, no, it's the third, the second house for Virgo, will be under Saturnian influence. And Saturn is strong in Capricorn, so with throwing its full aspect is going to be felt, right? So it's also going to play out in respect to Pisces, so the 7th and the 11th house. But there we also have Jupiter looking at it, right? And especially Jupiter aspecting its own sign becomes strong as well. So let's talk a little bit about the second house, right? This is going to be most felt. Saturn's transit is going to be most felt there. So second house relates to whatever you need to support you on your life path. You're going to have to work for it harder, right? Second house represents resources, your close friends and family. The name that you get from your family is also seen from the second. Collections, okay, which is a source of wealth, and then also gems, minerals, stones. This is also given by Parashara. So, but basically, it's all about what you need to support you on your life path. So you're going to have to work for it harder, and right. And the second house is the house of responsibilities, and Saturn is the planet of taking responsibility. Okay, when things are coming from a space of inner lack, then we compensate, right? And we forget, we lose track of the situation, of the truth of the situation. And so in that sense, the second house relates to, taking responsibility for what we need to support in our life path. This could be under review. Some vulnerabilities can come up in respect to second house affairs, okay? Then Saturn also planetary aspects Pisces, which is the 7th for Virgo. And the 7th relates to, relationships or one-on-one relationships, trade, business, partnerships, relationships. Also, it relates to long distance travel, so travel with people or trade with people overseas and so on. 7th relates to sex, intercourse, okay? Conception is seen from the 7th house. It's also a Maraka house, which is a death inflicting house. So death processes are seen from the 7th house, right? It's where the sun sets, right? So the body is born in the east, right? Where the descendant rises, represents the body, and in the 7th, it's the death of the body, okay? So, all right, but also Jupiter is planetary aspecting Pisces as well, so you can expect some manifestation respect to relationships and the things I mentioned too. Okay, so also Saturn aspecting is always going to bring up some, again, some vulnerabilities, some weaknesses maybe in respect to 7th house affairs, like relationships, but there will be good support from Jupiter. Jupiter is transiting Scorpio for a whole year. Jupiter is in good dignity, right? And it's aspecting its own sign Pisces, which makes it more powerful. And then Saturn does it from Capricorn as well. So Pisces will manifest as you will manifest too, okay? And then Cancer is the 11th sign for Virgo, and Saturn is planetary aspect, right? It's 180 degrees away from is Cancer, the 11th house. So the 11th house is a karma house, a desire-driven house. What you desire on a material level is seen from the 11th house. It's also a house of gains, okay? So money that comes in to you, that comes in before it gets taxed, is seen from the 11th. Parashara gives it as an acquisition of various objects. Okay, so what you desire on a material level, it's very desire oriented. Okay, so when we go after our desires, we need to be, just do it, right? But again, Saturn can bring up some struggle, some frustrations there. Maybe things don't seem to work out always that smoothly, like as you might wish. The 11th also relates to titles, like receiving a title, or getting some like graduation or something like that is seen from the 11th. The 11th also relates to, Parashara gives also domesticated animals are seen from the 11th. That can be under Saturnian influence if you're a farmer or something like that. But also Jupiter is a protecting influence there. So I think that's probably enough. See, the 11th house is the strongest. The Lord of the 11th is always the strongest yoga breaker, right? Because in life, we need to follow our dharma. See, before we find liberation, we need to open our hearts, right? We need to be filled with, we need to be vital, okay? And our hearts need to be filled with positive energy, right? So that we can tackle the problems of the world, so that we can tackle ourselves, right? And the weaknesses within ourselves, which is represented by Saturn. Okay, and so the 11th Lord is one of the strongest yoga breakers in that sense. So it can break you from dharma, following your dharma. See, so in that sense, that desire, right? It's rajas means it's mist, like it can be clouded or can be interfering with your feeling, the path to fulfillment. Okay, and so the 11th house is all about that. And so Saturn throws its aspect there, so there could be things coming up there which you need to integrate. Okay, but again, Jupiter is protecting it. There could be some insight also in respect to these things, or you just acquire more objects, right? You find ways to become more secure maybe on a material level, right? It's a finance house, maybe more money comes in, or there will be some solidifying influence to Cancer, which is in the 11th house there. This is all possible. So this is a general forecast. Keep that in mind. I'll just give some ideas about the houses, and there's so many ways that this can play out. So we need to have, we need to look at the personal horoscope, right, to see what is actually going on for the person. Okay, so all right, take care. I hope this was enough, and all right, bye. And now for Libra Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 4th house, and it will planetary aspect their 6th, 10th, and 1st house. Jupiter will throw its benefic aspect, its 5th aspect, onto its own sign Pisces, which is the 6th house for Libra Ascendant. And so you can also expect some things manifesting there as well. Because whenever Saturn, which is a crystallizing force, and Jupiter, which is a moist planet that's able to hold things and to make things grow, when they both aspect a sign, they give it manifesting strength as well. Okay, so Saturn is planetary aspecting Pisces, and Jupiter throwing its 5th aspect on it. So conditions are there. Also for Cancer, right? Saturn is opposing Cancer, and Jupiter is throwing its 9th aspect onto Cancer as well, which is the 10th house for Libra Ascendant. So, right, the 9th aspect from Jupiter is like a trine in the opposite direction. So it's important also to, note that these two signs are under benefic aspect of Jupiter. And Saturn is crystallizing that. So you can expect things coming to fruition in respect to 6th house and 10th house matters. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, the 4th Capricorn is under great manifesting influence due to the Rashi aspects it receives, and because Saturn, its lord, is manifesting it as well. Okay, so it's going to play out on 4th house affairs. So what is the 4th house? It's all about the home, right? The home, the homeland. Maybe you purchase a new home or something like that. The 4th relates to vehicles. All sorts of luxuries are seen from the 4th, right? Things that you feel comfortable with, like a comfortable couch or something like that. Then banks and deposits are seen from the 4th. So the money that you have on the bank, right? The 4th relates to wealth. Okay. And also the mother is seen from the 4th house, and also it's the house below, what you crave for, what is deep within you, what you desire on a level of heart is seen from the 4th house. And see, for Libra Ascendant, the 4th is ruled by Saturn, right? The 4th house, Capricorn, is ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is not like the most comfortable, soothing planet, right? It's a dry planet. So Libra is kind of fated to learn some lessons in respect to finding emotional fulfillment and peace of mind, because it is ruled by Saturn. Okay, so on a level of psychology, it's going to be important. And also, see, the original 4th sign is the sign of Cancer, right? And for Libra, it becomes the 10th house. And the 10th is the opposite of that. It's going out there in the world and to perform our great deeds, okay? So Capricorn is the 4th house for Libra Ascendants, and Capricorn, the original 10th sign of the zodiac, relates to performing our great deeds. So there's like this flip-flop going on for Libra Ascendant. So it's about balancing out what you need to find security within, all right, and to find security on an external material level. And this is kind of a complex dynamic going on for Libra Ascendant. This is generally speaking, right? This is talking about the ascendant sign Libra, and also analyzing from the Parashara angle, we can, look at the Dharma yogas, which deal with how capable a person is of, following their inspirations, which always leads to fulfillment, right? When you follow your inspirations. And so in terms of, finding inner peace and contemplation, there can be some things coming up. Saturn is strong in its own sign, right? So it's going to give good results and, have the perseverance to, move on and to examine whatever you need on a level of heart, okay? And so, because it is a cruel planet, it's a malefic planet. So in that sense, I'm saying there's some lessons to learn always for a Libra Ascendant in respect to this. Okay, but you can expect great manifestation, especially in the year 2018, on, you know, all the things I mentioned on a concrete and material level. You know, in respect to fourth house matters. Okay, and Saturn will be also a planetary aspect in the sixth house, and Jupiter as well. Right? It will also give its benefic influence. So, manifestation with respect to sixth house affairs. What is the sixth house? The sixth house is applying our intelligence to deal with the struggles of the world. Okay. On a concrete material level, right, it can indicate that you, for example, right, find a new job or something, right? Sixth is all about this, making our lives better on a concrete and material level, again, because it's an Artha house, so it relates to that as well. And you see, in the sixth house is the house of enemies, right? This is what Parashara gives, so injuries, wounds, and cuts, because it also relates to nature, so how we protect ourselves and also how we improve. It relates to the original sixth sign of Virgo, right, which is all about discernment and self-improvement, so making our life circumstance better on a practical and a material level. Okay, this is what the sixth house is all about, and to do that we need to apply our intelligence. And, you know, in Gemini, the sixth is one of the houses of intelligence, so tackling our daily problems and improve, okay, because of it. So it can, there's a benefit, there's a good influence, right? There's a crystallizing, soothing factor, like Jupiter is soothing it, it's making it grow, is throwing its, you know, benefic aspect to it. And so, right, and that's going to be important because there is a focus, right, when Saturn, you know, aspects these places. It can also always bring up some vulnerabilities. You need to ask yourself the question, why do I get involved with the things that Saturn aspects? Is it because of compensatory behavior, right? I mean, am I compensating in respect to these things? And so on. So Saturn is where we need to take our responsibilities. So tackling the struggles of life can come up, and also it represents our inner lack. So where do we get involved for the right reason, for example? Okay, and do we need to put more effort into it? Because Saturn is always about that. Putting more effort into it. Whenever it transits something, it hits something. It's, you know, wants to improve that house. Okay, it wants to improve whatever it influences, because Saturn is the great cleanser. Okay, it wants to bring out authenticity and wants to ground us, right? It's in that sense very realistic, and it rules the earth, right? So, and the earth, you know, the Artha houses, sixth house and 10th house are all Artha houses, which deal with concrete manifestations on a material level and finding security there. So Saturn is gonna give its influence, it's going to help you in figuring out how to go about this, okay, to become more efficient, more practical. Then the 10th house, right, which is also aspected by Saturn from Capricorn, is also an Artha house, as I mentioned. It's performing our great deeds, your occupation. It's the Karma Bhava. Karma means action, Bhava means house. So also relates to authority figures, okay. The actions of the father are seen from the 10th house. Also, Jupiter is throwing its 9th aspect onto the 10th there, so you can expect some things coming to manifestation as well. Okay, so again, this relates to finding material security. All right. Okay, so and you know, going out there. See, Saturn is the Karaka, we say, like the important planet for the 10th house, because we need perseverance and hard work to perform our great deeds, right? And whenever it aspects, so it's going to bring up what, you know, whatever, it works on so many levels, right, on a psychological level. But generally speaking, when it aspects the 10th house or the 10th cusp, it's a good thing, because we need this work. It will, you know, bring our attention to, and it will make us work harder for it, right, to accomplish these great deeds. And when we do that, right, especially because Pluto is in Capricorn there, and so there could be some, and since a long time, right, it could be some challenges in respect to finding emotional fulfillment or peace of mind. But you know, if you work on the 10th house, right, it's polarity point there, it should balance out. Okay, this is an important point for Libra Ascendant, balancing these points out, these poles out. And so also planetary aspects, the 10th house, right, which is the body, appearance, okay, excuse me, with the first house. So Saturn throws its 10th aspect onto Libra, which is the first house. So the first house represents the body, health, okay, your strengths and your weaknesses, following your swadharma, following your natural inclination seen from the first house, and so on. So, and you know, Jupiter is not aspecting there, so there will be things coming up in respect to the life path, in respect to the health, and so on. So, you know, maybe you need to do a diet or something, or something like that, like fast, or take care of your health, or take more rest, right? Saturn aspecting first, or maybe it brings up some stuff in respect to following your natural inclination. Okay, so to follow your real career, we could say, because the first is numerologically related to the 10th, right? But the first is also a dharma house, so it's important to follow whatever is within you, what is naturally coming out of you, that thing gets enough expression, okay? And you know, following that, peace of mind comes, okay? And so this will be the challenges and the things that you can expect to manifest as well, right? Saturn, whenever Saturn moves on, right? So it means that it has cleansed the house. It's always improving. And even though if you have to let go of some things, and there was some grief involved and some things that were not compensated, is kind of a painful thing. And so you can always bring up some, you know, like sensitivities, like psychological sensitivities, okay, and where we, it will bring to attention where we, you know, act because of an inner lack, and it will not compensate for these things. That's Saturn's lesson, right? It wants to teach us that we need to find it within, right? The fourth is all about finding peace within, and it's a moksha house, right? So getting away from the troubles of the world, right? So Saturn is transiting its own sign. So there's a good possibility, there's strength there to tackle these problems, okay? Even, but you know, there's always some intensity involved when Saturn and Pluto get involved. It's going to be definitely in the fourth house on an emotion, play out on an emotional level. So great opportunity to learn, because Pluto is Shiva, right? It wants to destroy the ego, right? It wants to make you more authentic in what you feel and what you want to bring out there in the world, okay? And in order to do that, it will, we need to, first it needs to come up, right? It needs to be, we need to become more conscious. It's always like that, right? Things that are unconscious, when things are unconscious, right? It's like fate that is happening to us. We don't see it coming. So it, you know, makes us pay attention, and from there we can evolve, right? And become more fulfilled human beings. So I think that's enough for Libra Ascendant. Okay, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. And now for Scorpio Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their third house, and it will planetary aspect their 5th, 9th, and 12th house. Now Jupiter will be throwing its 5th aspect onto Pisces, its own sign, so that's powerful. And whenever Saturn and Jupiter planetary aspect the sign, it also gives, they also give it manifesting potential. Same for Cancer, which is the 9th house for Scorpio. Also Jupiter throws his you know, 9th aspect onto Cancer, so that's like a trine in the opposite direction, right? So we have Saturn, you know, opposing aspecting Cancer. And so these two houses will be under manifesting influence as well, right? Jupiter is always a protecting influence. It's a moist planet, right? One of the qualities, so it's able to hold things together, and it always makes things grow, whatever it conjuncts, Rashi aspects, planetary aspects. It is the great benefic. So Saturn's planetary aspect will be most felt, you know, in terms of Saturn as, you know, creating some resistance, creating some, maybe you get involved with these things because of an inner lack, so always be aware of the reasons why you get into these affairs. So there will be some more lessons in respect to 12th house affairs because Jupiter is not aspecting there. Okay, so right. So Capricorn is under great manifesting influence for the whole year of 2018. And this is happening in Scorpio's 3rd house. So what is the 3rd house? The 3rd house is your technical intelligence, right? Also applying, it's all about self-will and, you know, using or becoming courageous. The 3rd relates to short distance travel, and also, you know, ambition, like commerce. So Parasha gives, see, all things that are kind of difficult, it's like new things to learn, like a language or learning how to play an instrument, is all seen from the 3rd house. So in that respect, technical intelligence. So Parasha gives it as upadesha, so initiatory instructions. So learning the ABC and so on. So it's a house of intelligence, right? Becoming smarter, developing skills to improve your life. It relates to the original 3rd sign, which is Gemini, right? Which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is all about finding new ways and applying your intellect and developing new skills to express yourself in the world, right? Now, so we have that going on. Then there's also the aspect to Pisces. So Saturn is planetary aspecting Pisces, and Jupiter for the whole year of 2018 is also planetary aspecting it. So you can expect some good results from Pisces as well, which is the Scorpio's 5th house, and which is all about creativity, right? Pisces is a water sign, right? For Scorpio being a water sign, right? The trines are water signs, and that's good potential to learn something new, because the 5th is the house of knowledge and applying your creative intelligence. See, in Gemini, the 3rd is technical intelligence. The 6th is, you know, applying your intelligence to tackle the troubles, you know, the daily problems you face. Okay. And then the 5th is applying our creative intelligence. It's also a Dharma house. Okay, Dharma means nature, so it's about expressing yourself on a creative level. It also relates to yantra and mantra, all sorts of spiritual practices. And the 5th is also about consistency. Right? It relates to the original 5th sign, the Leo, which is ruled by the sun. The sun is all about consistency. So Parasha gives consistency and continuance. So the 5th house also has another connotation. It's also Parasha gives a fall from royalty, because it's the 8th from the 10th. And the 10th is the karma bhava, right? Action house, and relates to status. So the 8th, the break from the status, is the 5th house. So the 5th has also this connotation. Also in when we examine Sagittaria Vastas, the 5th house, in the 5th house, planets can get ashamed. So any planet that is conjunct Saturn, Sun, or Moon in the 5th becomes ashamed. So it has, you know, it has the name of being a fun house, right? It's romance as an expression of creativity is seen from the 5th, and also children, of course. But on more psychological level, it's also it can be, you know, a fall from royalty. Some break can happen in the 5th. Okay, so right, as Parasha says, continuance and consistency, and so it can, you know, dashes when you're running dashes, you know, of the Lord of the 5th, or planets in the 5th, or something like that. There can be a change going on, like it sounds a little dramatic, right? A fall from royalty, but you know, sometimes this is what the person needs, right? To just be able to move on and to change course. So, but there will be, you know, things coming out of the 5th, right? Creative expression, new projects. The 5th also relates to like sports, like athletics and games and this kind of thing. Like also gambling is seen from the 5th. So it is a Dharma house. It is a house that comes, you know, where things come with ease. All right. This is, you know, generally known, but it has deeper meanings as well. So Saturn always, you know, when Saturn influence, it wants to, you know, bring focus to why we get into certain things, right? It's always, are we in it for because of we are compensating, right? So there could be some vulnerabilities coming up in respect to these houses when Saturn influence, right? Saturn is strong from Capricorn, so it's full influence because it's throwing its third aspect, right? 60-degree aspects onto Pisces, and so it will be felt, right? But we have Jupiter there and also in very good, in good dignity, in Scorpio there, throwing its manifesting influence as well. Okay, so that's for the 5th house. Then it also aspects their 9th, which is Cancer. Okay, so Saturn opposes Cancer, and Saturn throws its 7th aspect onto Cancer. So for Scorpio, that is the 9th house, which is the strongest of the Dharma houses. The 1st, the 5th, and the 9th are the Dharma houses. All right, so it's all about following one's natural inspirations, and by following your inspirations, you open up for the possibilities of the world, right? What the world has to offer. And by doing that, you open up for positivity and you attract, good luck and fortune, which is all seen from the 9th. See, the 9th is everything that you believe in, right? That is greater than yourself. If you believe in God or anything, is seen from the 9th. So it has a spiritual connotation. Gurus, teachers are seen from the 9th. Also marriage, right? Which is also greater than yourself. So it's a union of two people, which, is not only about themselves any longer. It's about the marriage. So the 9th is also related to that. Pilgrimages is seen from the 9th. So it's a travel that inspires you, like going on a course or something abroad, and so maybe you can visit your teacher or guru or whatever. So that is also under the influence of Saturn and Jupiter. So that's a good aspect. You can expect some things to to manifest there, to come to fruition. Right, maybe you go abroad or something like that and get inspired. Okay, and then also Saturn is going to fully aspect Libra, okay, which is the 12th for Scorpio, and 12th relates to expenses, losses. Also, long-term planning is seen from the 12th. Vacations, okay, so spending time alone, right? The dream world is seen from the 12th, right? Everything that is kind of beyond this world, okay? The 1st is the body, and the 12th is, away from the body, we could say. So away from the material world. It's a moksha house, right? So it's where we find liberation, where we, get away from the troubles of the world. And so there could be some more expenses, for example, right? By following one's inspirations, maybe you have some more expenses. This kind of thing play out on so many levels. So I'm just giving some general ideas, right? We need to go into the personal horoscope to see what's actually going on, right? Because we're using then, the dashas and the divisional charts and so on. So, so if we kind of summarize, okay, so Scorpio, it will, Saturn will throw its aspects, its crystallizing aspect onto their 5th and 9th. And Jupiter is, aspecting its own sign, Pisces, which is also always very strong when a planet aspects its own sign, whether it's Rashi aspecting or planetary aspecting, right? It's powerful. And when you have both, and this has been researched by Kian Rao, there is always something coming out of that. So it's positive. At the same time, Saturn is Saturn, right? So even in the 3rd, you can expect things to come to fruition, right? In respect to developing skills and learning learning something new, right? And the 3rd house is the house of movement, right? It's associated to short distance travel. But Saturn is, it is a malefic, okay? So the things it's conjunct and aspects can always bring up some vulnerabilities. So always you need to put more work into these things. There can be some delays and some frustration. So it's just making us aware that of the reasons why we get into things. And so if it's coming from an inner lack, and then these things will be under review, right? You need to go, you will have to go within to find out. And right, and so whenever that transit is over, Saturn is the cleanser, okay? When he transits a sign, when he aspects, it's always bringing these things up. And when the problem is solved, right, because it's a tamasic planet, so it's all about solving problems, then it moves on. And so there will be lessons to learn in respect to following your dharma, okay, following your inspirations, and also getting away from the troubles of the world, okay, so spending time alone. Saturn is aspecting that, so there could be some maybe you find less time, you know, to just maybe you find less time to spend on your own, and so on. This could play out like this. Okay. All right. I think that's enough for Scorpio Ascendant. Bye. Okay, and I just want to add for Scorpio Ascendant, I said planets in the fifth can get ashamed, right? So any planet that is conjunct, I said any planet that's conjunct Sun, Saturn, or Moon, but that's not true. It's Sun, Saturn, or Mars. Okay, so any planet that is conjunct Sun, Saturn, or Mars in the fifth can feel shame. Okay, this is what I just wanted to add. Okay, bye. And now for Sagittarius Ascendant. For Sagittarius, Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their second house, and it will planetary aspect their fourth, 8th, and 11th house. Jupiter will also, or is also throwing its fifth aspect onto their fourth, which is Pisces. And whenever Jupiter planetary aspects its own sign, it makes it strong, right? It's a powerful aspect. And whenever Saturn and Jupiter both planetary aspect a sign, they also give it manifesting strength. This has been researched by Ken Rao. Also, Cancer, which is the 8th house for Sagittarius Ascendant, is under good manifesting influence because both Saturn and Jupiter are also aspecting. Jupiter throws its 9th aspect, and then Saturn is opposing Cancer, right? So that's that, and then also the 11th house will be under the strongest Saturnian influence, we could say, okay, for the whole year of 2018. That's the 11th house affairs. So Capricorn is on a great manifesting influence for the whole year of 2018. All right, and for Sagittarius Ascendant, this is their second house. So what is the second house? All things that support you on your life path are seen from the second house. It's also where you need to be responsible. Okay, the second relates to resources, close family, friends, right? Gains in that sense. Also, it's a finance house. Also, Parashara gives collections, like you know, collecting anything as a source of wealth. Also, gems, jewels, and you know, jewelries and stones and this kind of thing are seen from the second. Your value, all right, so your value is seen from the name that you get from your parents, is also seen from the second house. Also the food that you take in, right? The second relates to the face. Okay, the Taurus, right? Taurus relates to the face. So the second, whatever you take in to support you on your life path. Now, so Capricorn is under manifesting influence, so you can expect these things to grow. Now Saturn is the lord of Capricorn. It becomes strong there, so there will be strength there. There will be perseverance. You will find perseverance to tackle these problems and to improve your financial situation. Okay, now Saturn is a malefic planet, right? It's in good dignity there, but it always makes you work harder for things. Okay, there can be some vulnerabilities coming up, and if you have, you know, a Saturn transit on your sun or your moon or something like that, it will always bring out the vulnerabilities in respect to what these planets represent as natural indicators and also as rulers of you know, a house and or two houses, right? So just be aware of that, but you can expect things to grow in respect to material security, all right? You will find more stability in or more opportunities in creating material stability, because the second is an Artha house, and Artha is all about creating material security. Okay, Capricorn Cancer axis is always about balancing out, because Capricorn is a movable sign, which is action oriented, and it's an earth sign, right, which is all about you know, finding material security. And so this opposition with Cancer is always about balancing out on an emotional level as well. So just keep that into consideration, but you can expect things to fructify, to come to fruition, to grow in respect to second house affairs. Okay, then it will planetary aspect Sagittarius' fourth house, which is, you know, Pisces, and Jupiter is also throwing its fifth aspect there, which is good. Okay, so fourth house is the home, right? So maybe you find a new home or something like that, or maybe there's a move going on. The fourth also relates to, it's also a finance house in the sense that it rules banks and deposits, and also the homeland, also vehicles, all sorts of luxuries, like a comfortable couch is seen from the 4th house. The mother, right, relationship to the mother is seen from the 4th. Also, it's the house below, right? So what is deep within you, what you crave for, what you desire on a level of heart is seen from the 4th. And so finding emotional happiness, fulfillment, and peace of mind is definitely seen from the 4th, okay? And so Saturn, strong aspect, because it's, you know, Saturn is in its own sign, so it's strong there. So whatever it throws its influence on, its aspect onto, will be felt, right, because it's strong there. And so at the same time we have this supporting, protecting, growing Jupiter aspect in this. So I feel that I mean, the the chart shows that the transits show that also in respect to 4th house, Sagittarius can expect positive things coming to existence, so fruition. Okay, so see, Sagittarius has been having Saturn transit for 2.5 years, right? And I don't know if you know some Sagittarius ascendants, but I do, and it's been, extremely rewarding. Okay, so they suffered, right? They, especially on a level of health and in respect to their life path, where to go to, right? What is my natural inclination? What is it? Why I'm here? Why am I here on this planet? And all these questions have been under review for the last 2.5 years, in respect to health also. And so and especially when Saturn, and retrogrades in your sign, and it's it can be a tough thing, right? And so now it's going to give its results. Okay, Saturn it's a hard teacher, relentless in that sense, but it will give results. It will improve. It wants to, whenever the problems is solved, it confronted these people with inner lack and compensation and all these things, these psychologically complexities within the person came to the forefront, right? Things are going to lighten up, right? Saturn, Jupiter has already transits, slipped into Scorpio since a couple of months, so it's also aspecting Pisces, their 4th, and so in terms of finding some emotional peace, and things will move on. Okay, so that's indicated. Now, if your sun is in Capricorn or moon, as I mentioned, right, it will have an impact, of course, on your vitality, right? The sun, your sense of identity. So whatever it will conjunct, it will bring out the vulnerabilities, right, as I mentioned. And so keep that into consideration. We need to look at the whole horoscope. This is a general forecast, right? So, okay, having said that, it will also planetary aspect their 8th house, and also Jupiter is throwing its 9th aspect onto their 8th house. So 8th house is the money that comes in from other people. So you can expect some finances to come to you. You're going to have to work for it. There also can be some delays and frustrations in respect to these things, because it is Saturn throwing its a full aspect, right, as the opposition to Cancer. But Jupiter is there as well, also in good dignity, throwing its aspect. So things will come to fruition. There will be take responsibility in respect to these things. The 8th house is all about working the ego, finding, becoming psychologically healthy and integer, right? It's seen from the 8th. It also has a occult connotation, right? The 8th is all about working the ego. It's sudden ups and downs, right? So things that kind of shock you. It can give you things. It can take things away. It never leaves you alone. This kind of thing. So because we need to find stability. Again, it's the Capricorn Cancer axis, and for Sagittarius, it's like has a double significance, because Capricorn and Cancer are already about that, right? Finding this balance between material security and your emotional peace of mind. And then the 8th and the 2nd is, the 8th is a moksha house, the 2nd is an artha house. It's also has also this connotation. Okay, so you can expect some things coming up there, and but there will have good results, positive results, as Jupiter for the whole year of 2018 is, you know, looking at Cancer, the 8th house as well. And then Capricorn will throw its 10th aspect onto Libra, which is the 11th house for Sagittarius. And the 11th is, Parasha gives it as acquisition of various objects. It's a Kama house. It's the strongest of the Upachaya houses. So Kama means desire, okay, following one's desire on a material level. So in that sense, excuse me, acquisition of various objects. What we desire on a material level and going after that. There could be some delays, there could be some frustrations, some lack in respect to these things. See, the 11th is titles, right? I mentioned Upachaya. Upachaya means growing, okay? It grows over time. And it's also a finance house, right? It relates to gains, right? The 11th from any house is the gain of that house, okay? So if you looked at the 11th from the 7th, for example, and transits going on there, it can relate to, you know, 7th house affairs, like gaining in respect to 7th house affairs and so on. So it's always the gain from the house. And okay, so now, and the 11th also relates to domesticated animals, right? For farmers and this kind of thing, because it's the things that grow, right? Like chickens give eggs and cows give milk. All right, and then the 11th house, it's the strongest, it's a Kama house, so desire-driven. It can be tricky. That's what I wanted to get at. It can be tricky because, see, in Parashara, the 11th lord in the horoscope is the strongest evil lord, right? So evil lords disturb Dharma yoga. So Dharma means following our natural inspirations, and the 11th lord can disrupt that because it's you know, fixed on a desire, following one's desire on a material level. And so Saturn aspecting there can bring some things up. Okay, the 11th is also friends, like groups, like subgroups, you know, like what is it, like fan clubs and this kind of thing is also seen from. There's like the people that you go out with, not your close friends. The close friends are the second, like your family and so, and close friends, the 11th are more people that you casually meet or something like that. Maybe, you know, you find less time, or maybe there's some lessons to learn in respect to groups and feeling validated, which is also seen from the 11th, right? In that sense, the strongest yoga breaker, but the 11th wants a validation, like in that sense, titles, okay? Receiving titles and recognition also. And it can disturb Dharma, right? It can disturb the natural flow of how things come to you and want to be manifest. If you think about something else, right? So Saturn will, you know, throw its aspect there and will bring some things up. Okay, so also, you know, we see that Pluto is in the second, right, for Sagittarius. So Pluto is Shiva, right? So the ego destroyer. So the closer Saturn gets to its conjunction to Pluto, which I will talk later on, it's not going to happen in quite some time, but it always indicates some intensity. Okay, so where we need to let go of ego and to become more authentic in respect to that house as well. And Pluto is always letting go of some fear and some, you know, ego and the things that we're not having any control over, right? Are being smashed by Pluto, and that's a good thing. Okay, all right, I think that's enough for Sagittarius Ascendant. Good luck and talk to you soon. Bye. And now for Capricorn Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their first house. It will planetary aspect their 3rd, 7th, and 10th house. So the 1st, the 7th, and the 10th are cardinal points, right? So they're points of action. Jupiter will be throwing its 5th aspect onto Pisces, its own sign, which is powerful. And whenever Saturn and Jupiter both planetary aspects, so I didn't mention this in the introduction, but this is also happening. They're all also given manifesting strength. This has been researched by Aki and Rao. And this is also happening for Cancer, which is the 7th house. So for, what is it? So Pisces is their 3rd house. It's going to be under manifesting influence as well. Their 7th, you know, is aspected by Saturn from Capricorn, right? It's the opposition, and then Jupiter throws its 9th aspect, which is like a trine in the opposite direction, onto Cancer as well, so which is the 7th house. So these two houses will be under both Saturnian as well as Jupiterian influence. Okay, Saturn crystallizes. Jupiter is a moist planet, able to hold things together and always makes things grow. Especially when it, planetary aspects its own sign, becomes even more powerful. Okay, so then Capricorn is under great manifesting influence for the whole year of 2018, right? Because Jupiter is transiting Scorpio for a whole year, right? So this influence will hold for the whole year of 2018. Okay, so what is the first house? The first house is most importantly your Swa Dharma, so your natural inclination. What you're born to do here on earth is seen from the first, right? It's numerologically related to the 10th house, which is all about performing your great deeds, right? They both carry number 1. And see, the first is an action house, right? And also a Dharma house. So Dharma means nature, following one's inspirations, yeah. Obviously the first house represents the body, right? Your strengths and your weaknesses, the pains of the body, how comfortable you feel in your body, all seen from the first house. Okay, so what can you expect is like things will grow, will manifest, will come to fruition in respect to your life path, right? What you envision for yourself, what you want to do in the world. Okay, so Saturn is entering its own sign there, its own house, its own domain in Capricorn, so it's strong there. So it will definitely make you work for it. Okay, Saturn is where we need to take responsibility, where we need to work hard. It can bring up some vulnerabilities, even though it's in its own sign, right? In its own sign, meaning it's strong to fulfill its responsibilities. So there's a lot of potential, a lot of growth foreseen for Capricorn in 2018. And as I mentioned in the introduction, Capricorn is the most fated sign according to Gemini, right? So it can go either way, like things can come up, and Capricorn is a sign that has a great potential to go into the root of suffering and to rise above it, okay? To deal with their psychological complexes and to apply their will, right? It's just such a willful and decisive sign. And so Saturn entering there will bring things to the forefront in respect to health and the body, okay? So what the path of the body is on. So it can, as I mentioned, it can bring up some things that you need to, that you need to examine, okay? Saturn, transiting a sign is going to be for 2.5 years, so it is going to be a 2.5 year period of cleansing. Okay, Saturn is the great cleanser. It's the great teacher. Okay, because it doesn't want to compensate us for our inner lack. So it can bring up things. So it's always good to examine why you get into things, right? This is what Saturn is all about. So how authentic are you, right? Pluto is also there, which is also about making you much more authentic, right? So Pluto is Shiva, right? The ego destroyer. So, and when Saturn and Pluto get into a sign, it will always indicate some intensity. Well, serious intensity. And so, but the closer the conjunction get, the more intense things become. Okay, so shedding off old things, right? Things that do not serve you on your path, right? And letting go of attachment, right? Where Saturn is where we need to detach, where we need to apply a mentality of detachment and to look within. And Saturn indicates, as I mentioned, inner lack. So whenever it transits a sign, right, and especially in Capricorn, it's strong, it's going to bring those things up. But at the same time, if you work them through, and how you work them through is to find out what is going on, right? If you're into things because you're compensating too much, for example, then these things will not be fulfilled at all. And now if you find out inside, if you can make the journey inward, you can get an understanding of what is going on. So maybe you need a therapist or something like that, or do some ceremony or whatever can bring light to these complexes, bring awareness to what is going on. And then you can put in the effort, right? You understand and you know what to do, and you can put in the effort, and that's always very rewarding. And so Saturn is a planet that can give great rewards, right? It's the cleanser that just wants to show us where we have our inner lack, where our vulnerabilities lie. And by doing that, we become healthier and more authentic human beings, okay? So it's going to be a powerful transit for Capricorn in respect to their life path, in respect to what they're here to do on Earth, right? And okay, so enough said about that. So manifestation, okay? 2018 is a great year to manifest, to become healthier and authentic human beings, okay? So Saturn is going into planetary aspect Pisces, their third house, and also Jupiter is throwing its aspect there. So in respect to third house affairs, you can expect things to come to fruition as well. And also, right, Saturn's influence is always bringing up these vulnerabilities, these things. Also, if your sun is in Capricorn or moon or any personal planet, you will have Saturn transit somewhere within these 2.5 years. And so again, a Saturn conjuncting a planet will always bring up the sensitivities, the vulnerabilities in respect to what that planet represents as a natural indicator, and also as you know, the ruler of two houses or one house, right? In respect to the sun and the moon, they only rule one house. Okay, so for example, if it transits your sun, it's going to have an impact on your vitality, okay, on your identity, your core identity. So these things will be on a review in respect to the moon, right? What you need to be fulfilled on an emotional and personal level. See, these things will come up, okay? So it's Saturn's planetary aspect to Pisces, the third house. Third house relates to skills, right? Applying your technical intelligence, like self-will, courage, are all seen from the third. It's a house of movement, so short distance travel is seen from the third. Also, you know, Parashara gives it as like servants, okay, like people that work for you. The third relates to commerce, like it's a house of ambition, right? It's a karma house, it's desire driven, relates to ambition, and in that sense also commerce, like businesses are also seen from the third. But applying our technical intelligence, learning new things. Parashara gives it as upadesha, okay, initiatory instructions, learning the ABC, a new language, learning how to play an instrument, and so on. The third relates to the performing arts as well. Okay, so learning new skills to improve our lives, right? The third relates to the original third sign, which is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is all about applying our intellect, learning new skills to improve our lives, okay? This is why Mercury always gets involved. So this is what's going on for the third house for Capricorn Ascendant. And we'll also planetary aspect their seventh house, the seventh house of relationships, okay? Also Jupiter is a protecting influence, a growing influence onto their seventh house. So all one-on-one relationships is seen from the seventh house, so the relationship with the spouse, but all one-on-one relationships. The seventh is what you project out there, right? So what you project out there, you get back. And so that's also Saturn, right? What you project out there is coming from an inner lack. Well, you're not going to be compensated for it. If you know why, right? You understand the reasons why, then again, it's much easier to make the best out of the situation and to grow and to become more realistic, more grounded in what you want and want to express, okay? Seventh house affairs. Seven also relates to trade. It's, you know, the house furthest away. It's 180 degrees away from the ascendant, from the body. So it represents long distance travel. Also trade, like business partnerships, are seen from the seventh, right? If you take into consideration the third house, the seventh, they have these connotations. They're both karma houses, so desire-driven houses. The seventh also relates in that sense to sex, intercourse, conceiving. So conception is seen from the seventh house. It's also a Maraka house, a death-inflicting house, because it's the 12th from the 8th, right? The 8, the life force, the 12, the loss of the life force. So death processes, there can be death process. It's Cancer sign, so on an emotional level, right? Things can come up, things need to be looked at, right? And to create always, you know, to create emotional balance, right? This is always the Capricorn Cancer axis, action that is motivated to create material security against creating emotional stability, emotional peace of mind, right? It's Cancer. This is always a challenge for Capricorn Ascendant. Okay, so, but also Jupiter is there. So there's a protecting influence, a growing influence, and things can crystallize there. Things can come to fruition. And then Saturn will also planetary aspect their 10th house, right, which is Libra. Okay, it's throwing its 10th aspect. So Libra will be under the greatest Saturnian influence within, 2018, because there's no aspect of Jupiter, right? So what is the 10th house? The 10th is all about performing your great deeds. It's the karma bhava. Karma means action, bhava means house, where we perform our great deeds, okay? Status is seen from the 10th. Authority figures, our occupations, what we need to do to fulfill our responsibilities on a material level, right? The 10th is also an Artha house, which deals with creating material security again. Okay, so all these things will be highlighted for Capricorn Ascendant. So see, Saturn aspecting the 10th house. Saturn is the Karaka, or the important planet for the 10th house. So whenever it aspects like the cusps or something like that, it's throwing its influence, right? So you're going to have to work harder for it, but it's rewarding, okay? Especially when it's Rashi aspects, a sign, and but even the planetary aspect, when Saturn, being the Karaka, is going to be a supporting influence to, persevere. And Saturn is strong, right, from Capricorn, so the aspect will be felt for sure. So you're gonna have to put more work, more effort into it. It can also create some frustration, some delays, maybe things, don't work out as as smoothly as you might wish. So you're gonna have to put in effort into it, but things will grow, okay? And whenever Saturn gets involved, it wants to improve things. So when the transit when it moves on, right, to the next sign, then these points, it aspects, it conjuncts, will have improved. Even if you had to let go of some things, if there was some grief involved, some psychological complexities, all these things need. It's important that these things come to the light, right, and that we can evolve, and that we can move on as more mature, healthy, and grounded beings. Okay, so it's going to be a very powerful transit. So I will be talking a little bit more about the Pluto Saturn conjunction. It's not going to the conjunction is not going to get close anytime soon. So a little later on, I will discuss a little more about that. But Pluto is it's making us more authentic human beings. Okay, so it's the Shiva, it's the, as I mentioned, the ego destroyer. So the things that we don't have any control over, right? The things that we hold on to, that we are so attached to, Pluto is there to break that, so that the light of the soul can come in, right? See, the other planets always work together, right? Uranus is representing that, like the light of the soul. And so when Pluto hits something, then Uranus will fill you with more light, right? It's the whole, when there's a crack, right, then the light can come in. And so Pluto is all about that. So you see, if Capricorn Ascendant people in the last years, right, they have become much more assertive, and maybe having a hard time. But at the same time, see, Pluto is, your sun is in Capricorn, and Pluto is conjuncting it, or something like that. It's really, going into, it's really working on the core identity of the person, right? What the soul is here to do, and all attachments are blown to pieces, as we could say. And slowly but surely, more and more, the person becomes free, right? And then Uranus will transit will help out, and to fuel us, okay, to fuel whatever we need to move on and to become more enlightened, we could say, to spread more light and to become more serving to the world, okay, to the kingdom, to your own kingdom. And so it's intensity, at the same time manifestation, applying summarizing. Third is all about the skills, developing the skills. The seventh in respect to relationships and what you project out there. And the 10th performing your great deeds. So Capricorn is going to have to work hard and is on a path of self-improvement for sure. Okay, yeah, I think that's enough for Capricorn. Okay, bye. And now for Aquarius Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 12th house, and Saturn will be planetary aspecting their 2nd, 6th, and 9th house. Jupiter will also throw its benefic aspects to Pisces and Cancer, right? And also Taurus, right? It's always, the opposition is always aspected, okay, the opposite sign by any planet, but Jupiter has also a special set of aspects, planetary aspects. So Jupiter aspects the 5th, the 7th, and the 9th place from itself. The 5th and the 9th are two trines, right? The 9th is like a trine in the opposite direction. So whenever Jupiter aspects its own sign, Pisces, right, planetary aspects, it's powerful, right? When it aspects, its own signs, Pisces or Sagittarius, it's even more powerful. And so this is happening in the year 2018. Jupiter is throwing its aspect from Scorpio. And whenever Saturn, crystallizing influence, and Jupiter, a moist planet, able to hold things together, right? It's a great benefic. It makes things grow, right? When they both planetary aspect a sign, they also give it manifesting strength. Okay, I haven't mentioned this in the introduction, but this is also what is going on. So this is happening for Pisces and Cancer, which is the 2nd and 6th house for Aquarius Ascendant. So that's good news. Now, then Capricorns will be under great manifesting influence for the whole year of 2018, as I mentioned in the introduction. So this is happening in respect to their 12th house. So what is the 12th house? The 12th house is a moksha house. It's the house, moksha means liberation, in essentially getting away from the troubles of the world, right? So it's going within, going deep within. The 12th relates to that, right? It's the house of imagination, your subconscious mind. Okay, so it's Vidikara puts it very nicely. It says it's erodes the first house. Okay, the first is the body, and the 12th erodes the body. It's like everything that is off planet, right? Dreams, imagination, expenses, and losses. Okay, the things that don't support you in your life path. The second, right, is the house that supports you in your life path. The 12th erodes that, so takes away from that. So expenses, losses. Also, it's the house of vacations, long-term planning. It's places of research are seen from the 12th house, imprisonment, okay, hospitals, right, places of refuge, like ashrams and this kind of thing, all seen from the 12th house. So these things can come to fruition, right? There will be manifestation. Things will manifest on a concrete level there. So maybe you take a long holiday or a vacation or something, or you're going to be able to deal with your expenses. Okay, this is the manifesting influence to Capricorn, and it's important because Saturn is also throwing its planetary aspect onto the 2nd and the 6th house, which are both Artha houses, and Artha houses deal with creating material security. So Saturn's influence, right, is always bringing up some vulnerabilities, some delays, some hard work that needs to be put in. But, Jupiter is also there throwing its protecting influence and also its manifesting influence, right? So in respect to finances, you can expect things to grow. You're going to have to work for it. So there can be losses, things come in, things will go. But in 2018, you can expect things to improve in respect to your finances, resources, 2nd house, whatever you need to support you on your life path. Okay, that is your close family is seen from the 2nd, close friends. Also, right, it's a finance house of gains. Also, collections is given by Parashtra, which is a source of wealth, like gems, stones, minerals, also seen from the 2nd. It's also the house where we need to take responsibility, okay? Because, because it's, the 2nd relates to your self-value, right? So when you take responsibility for things, your value improves, right? And it's also a death-inflicting house, Samaraka house, we say in Vedic Astrology. So when you stop being responsible for things, right, they decay, right? They get out of, they move, they vanish out of your life. And so in that sense, it's also a Maraka house. Now, Also on another level, it can inflict death, right? So, or death processes. The Lord of the second, when you're running a dasha of the Lord of the second or planets in the second, this could indicate that. Now, this is a very general thing to say, so keep in mind this is a general forecast, right? So, probably some things will touch ground here, right? But it's touching on the surface of things, because, you know, to really see what's going on with the person's life, we need to go into the divisional charts, right? And see what the dasha cycle they're running and so on. So that is for the second house. Okay, so you can expect that you can expect that you need to put more effort in there, but things will, because of that, will fructify. This is indicated by Jupiter's aspect, will manifest, okay, will grow. So that's good, right? Then the sixth house is also an Artha house. And the sixth house is the house of enemies. This is what's given in Parashar, right? So injuries, wounds, cuts, everything that, like things that you, or a debt that you need to pay or something, paying your dues is the sixth house. And so also Saturn is throwing its influence there. See, Saturn is strong from Capricorn, right? It's strong there. So whatever influence it throws, right, it's going to be, the full influence is going to be felt. But Jupiter is also there again to protect that and to make that grow, right? That's, you see, Jupiter is a great player, right, in this story. So, but at the same time, Saturn is a malefic planet. It's a cruel planet. Again, it represents our inner lack. So always be aware of the reasons why you get into what Saturn conjuncts and aspects. And if things don't seem to flow very well, then ask yourself the question, what is going on here, and so on. Okay, so it can bring up that sense, some vulnerabilities and some psychological complexes or sensitivities. Okay, but the sixth is about dealing with the daily struggles of life. It's a house of intelligence in Gemini, right? Applying our intelligence. In the sixth, we become much stronger. It can also be a house of devotion. Well, in the sense that, you know, meditating practices are also seen from the sixth house, right? One-pointed focus, right? Where you need to put focus and so on, are also seen from the sixth. But it's an Artha house. It's all about creating material security. Okay, so the fact that the 12th there is under great benefic influence for 2018, you will be able to manage your expenses and to improve these houses. But always, Saturn always indicates where we need to put in the work, the hard work, okay, and so on. Okay, so that's for the sixth house, and it will give its full Saturnian influence on the ninth house for Aquarius Ascendant, which is Libra, right? And the ninth is Dharma house. Dharma means nature, so following one's natural inspirations. It is the house. See, everything that you would believe in on a everything that we believe in that is greater or bigger than ourselves is seen from the ninth house, like believing in God or anything. It is, you know, it has a spiritual connotation, right? It relates to teachers and gurus and philosophy, learning of, you know, philosophy like higher thinking. It is indicates, or it represents like pilgrimages are seen from the ninth, right? It's travel that inspires you. All these things will be under Saturnian influence. There can be some delays there, some things coming up. Maybe things don't work as well or as smoothly as you might wish, and this kind of thing. But see, whenever Saturn transits something, it wants to bring our attention to it, and it's the cleanser, right? It wants to cleanse things out. It wants to improve things, and whenever these transits, you know, pass, then in respect to these areas in your life, there should have been improvement, okay? Even if there has been some grief, some letting go, and this kind of thing. Because, you know, the ninth is a joyful house, right? It's the strongest of the Dharma houses. Dharma leads to, you know, inspiration leads to liberation, okay? So there will be some lessons to learn there for Aquarius Ascendant. Okay, so nice influence to their 12th house, then the second and the sixth, and then, you know, a strong Saturnian influence to the 10th house, excuse me, to the 9th house for the next year. And, you know, Saturn will be transiting Capricorn for 2.5 years, right? So, but we'll talk a little bit later on about that, okay? Also, Pluto is in the 12th there, so there's some intensity on a subconscious level, right? The 12th, and Pluto is Shiva, the ego destroyer. And whenever Saturn and Pluto get together in a sign, it always indicates some intensity, letting go, right? Especially on a psychological level. In this case, letting go of some anxieties, fears that go deep, right? That we're not always conscious of. And so I will be talking a little bit more about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction when Saturn gets closer to Pluto, right? It's not going to happen for quite some time. Okay, take care and talk to you soon. Bye. And now for Pisces Ascendant. Saturn's transit through Capricorn will happen in their 11th house, and it will planetary aspect their 1st, 5th, and 8th house. And Jupiter will be also planetary aspecting Pisces and Cancer. Okay, so Jupiter throws its 5th and 9th aspect to these two signs, which is the 1st and the 5th house for Pisces Ascendant. And whenever Saturn and Jupiter both planetary aspect a sign, they also give it manifesting influence, which is, which has been researched by Kian Rao. So it's going to be, a good influence and manifesting influence to the 1st and the 5th, and the full Saturnian influence will be on the 8th house for Pisces Ascendant. Right, and this is happening in year 2018 as Jupiter is transiting Scorpio for a whole year. Okay, so this influence will will be going on for the whole year. Now, I mentioned that Capricorn is under great manifesting influence because of the Rashi aspects and the conjunction of its Lord there, and that is the 11th house for Pisces Ascendant. So, what is the 11th house? The 11th is a karma house. It's a desire-driven house, and Parashara gives it as acquisition of various objects. So whatever we desire on a material level is seen from the 11th house. The 11th relates to titles, right? It's the strongest upachaya house. Upachaya means growing, right? It grows over time. So, for example, when you have your Lagna Lord in the 11th house, right, that's considered a good placement because the older you get, the more your circumstance on a material level seem to improve. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's a karma house, so desire driven. It can be a tricky house. Okay, see, in Parashara, when we examine the Dharma yogas, and Dharma means nature. Okay, so these powerful Dharma yogas show whether a person is capable of actually following their inspirations, okay, or will have a harder time doing that. Because, and see, the 11th Lord in that story, in that analysis, is the strongest disrupting influence, okay? Because, see, karma is desire, right? Doesn't mean that we can't follow our desires, because we need to burn all our desires, right? On a material level, on any level, okay? So, but it can be disruptive in this analysis, because the 11th Lord is the strongest of the evil lords. This is what is given in Parashara. And see, it's important to follow our dharma, which is nature, right? Or following our natural inspirations, because before we can get liberated, before we can receive moksha, right, which is liberation, we need to fully integrate our dharma. We need to follow our inspirations, and because of following our inspirations, we open up the heart, right, and we are able to attract good luck and fortune. Okay, so that's why it's important, and that's why in this story the 11th house is a tricky house. So it's good for gains, right? It's the house that relates to gains, and again, what we desire on a material level. So also on a more psychological level, it relates to getting being validated. Okay, so groups, right? The 11th house relates to groups and networks and this kind of thing, and it can be a disrupting influence in the sense that we can get into these things because we need validation, okay? And validation is not necessarily, it's good to be recognized for what you do, but if that becomes a focus, right, you become dependent of these things, attached to it, then it can be disruptive to Dharma, okay? This is what is being addressed in Parashara, examining the Dharma yogas. And so, Saturn is stranded there, so you can expect gains, okay? So the 11th house is always the gain of the house. So any 11th position from any house is the gain from that house. So, on a material level, thing can manifest. Like the 11th house associates with or relates to the money that comes in before it gets taxed. Like if you're self-employed or anything, right? There's a lot of money that come in before it can get taxed, and so on. So validation, I'm saying this, the validating aspect. So, you know, and the reason why I go on about this is because Saturn will be also throwing its planetary aspect onto the first house. The first house is a Dharma house and also an action house, right? So it's a powerful point, of course, represents the body, right? The birth of the body, your health, right? The pains, the strengths and your weaknesses, and importantly, your Swadharma, following your natural inclination is seen from the first house, right? It relates to the 10th house, which deals with status and your occupation, right? Fulfilling your responsibilities on a material level, right, to survive. But they both carry the number 1, right? So, but the first is also Dharma. So it's also about following that inspiration. And Saturn is throwing its aspect. Jupiter is also throwing its aspect, excuse me, from Scorpio for the whole year of 2018. So these things will play out, right? So Saturn always representing our inner lack, can bring up some vulnerabilities in that respect to that on a more practical, concrete level. It can indicate delays or some struggles, some frustrations. But Jupiter is throwing its protecting and benefic, right? It is a great benefic influence onto it as well. So you can expect things to manifest there. So time to go within and to find out what you want to express, right? What is it that you were born to do, and this kind of thing is all seen from the first house. It's important. And so if things come in, if things manifest on a more material level and your desires get met, we could say, because at the same time Pluto is there as well, right? And Pluto is always destroying ego in respect to what it conjuncts. Okay, so because it's Shiva, Pluto is Shiva, the ego destroyer. And when Saturn and Pluto get involved in a sign, it always indicates intensity. Now I will talk a little bit more about that a little later on when the conjunction gets closer. But also Saturn being a malefic, right? It's a powerful player because it's entering its own sign, so it's able to give, right? And also, but it is a malefic. It's going to do it in a cruel way or in a more resisting way. You're going to have to work for it harder. And in respect to psychology, things can come up, some vulnerabilities can come up, things that Saturn brings focus to that you need to review about, where, for example, why you get involved with certain things, right? The things that Saturn influences are relating to some kind of inner lack. So be aware of the reasons why you get into these things and so on. And, it's playing out on a level of, self, right? The first house as well. So these things will be coming to the forefront. And Saturn also planetary aspects Cancer, which is the 5th house for Pisces. And so the 5th relates to knowledge, and it's also a Dharma house, right? It's also about inspiration. It's the house of knowledge, okay? It's the house of our creative expression, right? In Gemini, it's all about our creative intelligence and our creative expression, right? Also, so like romance, for example, is a way of creatively expressing ourselves, and children are seen from the 5th house. Also, continuance and consistency is seen from the 5th house, because the original 5th sign is ruled by the sun, right? The sun is all about consistency. But even though the 5th has this this connotation, right, of romance and lighthearted going on, see, in Parasha, the 5th Parasha gives also a fall from royalty, because see, it's the 5th, it's the 8th from the 10th house is the 5th, right? The 10th relates to status and the karma bhava, right? Karma means action, bhava means house. So where we perform our great deeds, and the 8th always represents the break of something. So it's the 8th from the 10th house, it is the 5th house. So Rasha describes that a fall from royalty. So the path can break in the 5th as well. And if we examine Lajitariya Vastas, right, the first of the Lajitariya Vastas is Lajita Vasta. So any planet that conjuncts Sun, Saturn, or Mars in the 5th house gets shamed, right? This is seen in the natal scope. So when we examine, so the 5th house, besides being a Dharma house and relating to lightheartedness and this kind of thing, also has this dimension going on. And so the path can change in the 5th house when you're running, in respect to 5th house affairs, not in respect to fifth house affairs, but plans that are in the fifth house and so on. So the fifth relates to that as well. And Saturn is aspecting it, and Saturn is strong from Capricorn. So throwing its full aspect is going to be felt. Now, Jupiter again is also throwing its aspecting in the year of 2018 onto Cancer, right? So it's again a crystallizing and manifesting influence, okay? But at the same time, you know, Saturn, you know, it's a neutral planet, both works on both levels internally and right on a psychological level, also on an external level. Can, you know, indicate some again some delays, some things that come up that need to be examined, okay? But there's the protecting influence of Jupiter as well. So in respect to bringing out, right, your creative vision, you can expect good results as well. So always you know, so Saturn always brings when Saturn influence, right, it's always lessons to learn. That's what I'm saying. Always needing to put the work in and so on. Okay, so I think that's enough for the fifth. And then it's also planetary aspects. The eighth house for Pisces, and the eighth house is the house of sudden breaks, sudden ups and downs. There's going to be a full aspect to the eighth house. Money that comes in from other people, okay, like inheritances, or maybe you need some money from some institution or something like that, seen from the eighth house. The eighth house is working our egos, right, becoming psychologically healthy, and integrity, seen from the eighth house. The eighth house is the house of life force and vitality. Okay, and in that sense also relates to sexuality. It's like the bond that is created after intercourse. It's the second from the seventh, right? So in the eighth has the occult connotation, right? Taboo, bringing things up, you know, that are deep, sometimes deep, buried deep within, this kind of thing. Okay, so there could be some resistance, maybe in respect to inheritance or finance, you know, in that sense also finance house, but it's working the ego. So some vulnerabilities can come up, right? In the eighth, we become psychologically healthy, right? We need to work it, all right? If you have like the nodes in the second and the eighth, right? Like if Ketu is in the second and Rahu is in the eighth, it's always indicating that the person needs to grow on a psychological level, right? The fourth relates more to finding emotional fulfillment and peace of mind. And the eighth, it's more on the level of psychology. Parasha also gives strongholds and fortresses, and so this can relate to chronic disease as well. So how strong our fortress is, right? How strong we are on, you know, both material and psychological levels. So there could be some things coming up there for Pisces Ascendant. Okay, so all right, I think that's enough for Pisces Ascendant. Take care and talk to you soon. Bye.